I'm going to call to order this evening's work session for the City of Salem and welcome everyone here and welcome the audience that's going to be watching or is watching our program this evening. I'm Anna Peterson, the mayor, and we will start with, I think, a presentation. Courtney, are you going to lead us off?
We'll start with a brief presentation, if that's okay.
Okay, that's excellent. Take it away.
So good evening, Madam Mayor, councilors. My name is Courtney Knox-Bush, and I work in the Mayor and City Manager's office. And this evening, we're bringing you some findings from a comprehensive assessment of the city's communications. The assessment has been informed by best practice, as well as perspectives of those in our community, including almost 500 anonymous survey responses and more than 60 interviews with representatives of Salem's neighborhood associations, business associations, media, social service organizations, faith-based communities, communities of color, and high school students, as well as city council and city staff. In response to the 2015 council goal around communications, which you can see here on the screen, and last year's budget direction, staff issued a competitive RFP for proposals, requests for proposals, and that resulted in Enviro issues being selected. The work began in late October, and today what you have is a progress report. So there's more work to be done, and we're going to hear a brief presentation from Ann Pressington providing an overview of the findings. And then, based on your discussion this evening, we're going to move forward with a strategic communications plan to meet the 2015 council goal of seeking more community involvement and participation in decision making. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann, and she'll give us an overview of all of the findings, and then we'll have a broad-ranging discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. And just to clue you in on our high-tech equipment here, you do need to speak right into the microphone.
Like this?
That's perfect.
Okay. Madam Mayor, members of the council, City Manager Powers, and other folks that are here tonight, thank you for inviting me here. I'm very happy to give this report to you tonight. As Courtney said, my name is Ann Pressington. I work for a company called Enviro Issues, and our company specializes in public communications and community engagement for a variety of governments throughout the Pacific Northwest. I'm going to be giving you a high-level overview of our results today, and at the conclusion of my presentation, I'll be happy to fill in any details on things that are of more interest to you. No, you can stay there. As Courtney said, this is really in response to the council's goal from last summer to seek community involvement and participation in decision-making, raise awareness of opportunities to provide input, and actively share information with the community, including funding and/or staff support for neighborhood associations to grow attendance and participation. So we're really building on the work that you began nearly a year ago. When we responded to a really well thought out request for a proposal, and with the goal identified in that RFP to raise awareness of key issues being discussed by City Council and to enhance transparency and trust in city government. As Courtney said, we were hired in September to assist Salem in reaching its goal. And our schedule is in front of you right now. The last fall we conducted research, and then now at the beginning of the year we'll be developing a citywide strategic communications plan. The research really informs the strategic communications plan, which is great to work on a project where we were able to do the research first before doing the planning or doing the actions. Sometimes it's the reverse, and it's not so good to get the cart before the horse. The research really allowed us to understand the context within Salem and the current environment, and also best practices. As Courtney hinted at, we did quite a bit of research. It really informed our findings. So I'll go over that just a little bit. We identified strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges by meeting with more than 60 people. That included Salem staff, stakeholders, media, and youth through small group discussions and telephone interviews. Some of the folks in the room here can probably now put a face to the person you were talking to on the other end, because I was the one who did all the phone interviews. We also reviewed communications materials produced by the city and other local organizations within Salem. And then we reviewed best practices by interviewing similarly sized cities in the Pacific Northwest, specifically 7 of them. We also conducted an online survey to reach people who don't always choose to be involved. We paid for some advertising in order to reach those folks who don't normally get involved in Salem issues or aren't paying attention as much. We offered the survey in both English and Spanish, and we had about 500 people participate, which is excellent. And then our final piece of research was that we did a demographic analysis of city residents. And this led to our findings. And I'll go through each of the key ones that we heard about through a variety of means. The first one is that the website upgrade that you're currently involved with was validated. The city's website was identified among the top resources and among folks who participated in the survey. You can see that's the purple bar. About 44% gain information about the city projects through the website. However, the next bar, the blue one, about 37% said they rarely use any of the resources. And then we also have information up there about the city's Facebook page, Twitter accounts, and other organizations. Latino respondents are more likely than others to use the social media resources. And that holds true in Salem and then also elsewhere. We've really seen that. Many stakeholders in the interviews provided concrete ideas about upgrading the website. Our next finding is that multiple tools, in-person, print, and digital, are needed to reach people. When people ask this question, they could pick multiple things. In the past 6 months, how have you learned about city news? You can see that people are gaining information about what's happening in the city in multiple ways. Of note, 43% said that the newspaper. So that is really an effective tool to get information out. And I know I heard through the stakeholder interviews that some remarks that people aren't reading the newspaper, but a lot of people are. So it is still remains, the print resource and the online resource remains a good way of getting information out to folks. 38% said newsletter. 32% said word of mouth. So that could be your neighbor, telling you information.
Most dangerous one.
27% said social media by the city. 27%, 24% said an email update. 22% social media by others. And then 22% also said a mailing from the city. Through the stakeholder interviews, folks also said that there needs to be multiple tools, both traditional and more new tools. And also a lot of face-to-face would be very useful in terms of getting information out about the city. I think that what we find here is that one way of getting information out is not, there isn't a silver bullet, unfortunately. If there was, then you would see a very different graph in front of you. And oftentimes we know through communications, people need to be reached multiple times and in multiple ways in order for a message to really stick. They might hear it once, not do anything about it, might hear again, oh wait, I think I heard about that. And then on the third time, they might actually do something with that information. In our research, we found that the Latino population was underrepresented Within Salem, based on our demographic analysis, and I know this isn't news to you, 20% identify as Latino or Hispanic, and among the population within Salem, 15% speak Spanish at home. However, only 7% of our survey respondents identified as Latino or Hispanic. And when we looked at the analytics of cityofsalem.net, less than 1% were accessing the website in Spanish. So it does indicate that while there's a large population of Latino residents in the community, they may not be as engaged in city efforts as perhaps we would like them to be, and have city projects really reflect the diversity that you have within your community. And also, I'll just mention that in the interviews, we did try to reach a diverse population in the interviews, and some people said that some Latinos or recent immigrants are not really feeling welcomed within the city, and that can be for a variety of reasons. One that comes up would be language. Our next one is that more frequent communication from the city is desired, especially regarding decision processes and how that input was used. And I call this closing the feedback loop. More than 60% of people in the survey said the city doesn't communicate very often, and less than 1% said too frequently. And I think this also goes to, you have to get to people multiple times in multiple ways in order for them to think about doing something with information that they have. In my stakeholder interviews, one person said they didn't know if the city would find me if I'm not engaged already. So this one particular person said, they were involved in city processes, but didn't know that if their job required them to be, if they would be found. And it's possible that some communication by the city is not seen as city communication, depending on where people are getting their information. And I'll also mention it's just really important to close the feedback loop for people who have chosen to get involved and comment on city projects, so that they know how their input was used. Even if their particular comment wasn't used exactly as provided, at least they know that it was considered in the mix. And so getting that information back out is really important for people to engage again. The city style guide is not consistently implemented. We have a couple of examples here. And also through the interviews, we found that a similar look and feel would be helpful to identify city programs. So I'll just identify a couple of these here. On the top left, no logo was used on a bill insert. And the logo the information the art that was used is a clip art image. On the bottom left, no logo was used on a handbook. In the top right, the logo on a social media profile picture doesn't follow the style guide. And then the bottom right is a good use of city guidelines with the logo in its appropriate configuration. Without having branding for the city, sometimes city communication may not be recognized as a city communication. And it's important for people to know how their tax dollars are being used, and so to connect a city communication with the city by use of branding and logos. Before I move on to this one, one other thing that's highlighted in your style guide is the use of clear text, and so that people can gain messages really quickly. And sometimes in our review of the materials, we found that some of the text could be a little more concise. People's attention spans are so short these days. Social media accounts and electronic tools could be more effective. We have two examples here. One is a Facebook page on the left-hand side, and if you look closely, you'll see that there's one post at the bottom, which I believe was in about October, and then a post at the top was in December. So that's about one per month. And then on the left, or on the right, excuse me, there's a Twitter feed that when we pulled this a few weeks ago, we found that it was last used about a year ago. So in looking at social media, the general rule of thumb for Facebook is to post about once a week, and for Twitter, it's about 3 times a week. You could do more, certainly, because they are social media. They're designed to engage audiences. What we think is that you could look at each of these and see which ones are really necessary, and some could possibly be combined. Communication and engagement successes like Minto Brown Island Park Master Plan and the police department's social media are appreciated and desired. These 2 examples came up multiple times in the stakeholder interviews. People identified them when asked of things that are going really well, that these things came up. People also mentioned the library as another example. So we have examples of where the city is doing a really good job. And there's another examples where we could sort of raise the bar a little bit. I also mentioned on social media that a few weeks ago you had some turkeys at City Hall. I don't know whether they were a welcome visitor, but folks started posting that on the Facebook page. I saw that as part of this project. Of course, I was logging on to Facebook, and I just think that's a great example of something you would put on social media. It engaged people. People responded to it. They liked it. You had ODFW responding, or at least the city reaching out to ODFW to say, hey, how can you discourage these turkeys from being here? I used to work for ODFW, so I know that you probably don't want turkeys hanging around City Hall, but it was an interesting thing to have on social media, so I really liked seeing that. 50,000?
49, 45, 999.
Yep. A lot of people liked the turkeys. In our interviews with other cities, we found that a centralized communication approach is favored by similar cities with a minimum of 2 staff in the city manager's office. Some have more than 2, as indicated in the table. So we talked to the City of Bend, the City of Boise, City of Gresham, City of Hillsborough, Clackamas County, and their population and their number of city or countywide FTEs are highlighted there. Sometimes you have folks in other departments who are doing communications, but a lot of times those group of communicators are coming together and really deciding how to move ahead with different efforts. We also talked to the City of Eugene and Tigard, and they have more of a decentralized approach. And my last 2 findings, we really found that staff are dedicated, but sometimes lacking resources, time, or the organizational structure to be as effective as they could be. And then also the city's growth and evolution really requires communication strategies to meet the changes. We would love to be able to rely on strategies that have worked in the past, but the public says it wants more. And information turnaround is so quick these days. People's attention spans are smaller and shrinking, and information is shared very quickly, and that requires the city to adapt communications to match what the public is used to seeing. Our next steps are to, after we gain input from you, is to work with staff to develop a strategic communications plan, and that will include.
Excuse me, I wonder if I'm going to interrupt you. I apologize, but I know a couple of counselors have questions, and I'm wondering if this might be an opportunity to stop for questions. If you have quite a bit more to share, because I don't want them to lose their thoughts and get too far away from what you were talking about earlier.
I don't know.
I welcome questions at this time because I am done.
Oh, I did not mean to.
Oh, that was the end.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councillor Dickey and Councillor McCoy, and then Councillor Bednarz, Councillor Anderson.
Right. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for this report. That's very interesting, and all the pre-work that you've done and the research that you've done on that. So I'm curious. You're talking about the Latinos were underrepresented in the survey, and it sounds like we have a very low percentage of Spanish speakers who are accessing our website and using the Spanish version. I'm wondering if you have a sense for. I don't know if Twitter does this. I know Facebook does a translate, so it's maybe easier to access that because you just click the translate button, and I don't know how accurate it is all the time, but I think it's easier to do that rather than trying to go to a website and figure out if you even know that it's in Spanish. I would wonder if people are aware of that. So I'm kind of curious if you think that could be a factor why people aren't really accessing the website in Spanish, because they may be using other, like social media, for example.
What we found with other research is the Latino population really does use social media quite a bit to communicate a variety of different tools. And it may be that they're not aware of the City of Salem's website. I'm not sure. I know there's a big effort underway to improve the website. Just making it more mobile friendly would be a big step. Because we see a lot of people who don't have computers at home. So they're using handheld devices, and of course they're going to use the different information resources that really lend themselves to being on a smartphone. It is one area where we have identified that perhaps additional research might be needed, specifically focusing on that segment of your population.
Thanks. And just have a follow-up, if I could. Thank you. Then the other question, I'm not sure who can answer this. Do we, in any of our social media, either Twitter or Facebook, do we actually put resources towards promoting any particular posts? Like you can choose demographics, and you can choose who you want to see it. Have we done that at this point?
We have done that in the past. We have promoted specific social media posts. We're not currently able to do it. We have to do some modifications to our Facebook admin to be able to do that. So right now we're not, but we have, and we can continue.
Great, thanks.
All right, Councilor McCoy.
Thank you. Back to the basic survey, is it statistically valid? In other words, it's not a poll, you put the survey up and whoever responded, right?
That's correct. It was not a statistically valid survey. It was really an outreach survey to try and reach as many people as we could. It's very cost effective. It's certainly not the end all be all, but it allowed a lot of people to participate that you don't normally hear from. So that's a great thing. And it also gives you a window into where people would like to receive their information, and used in concert with the other interviews that we did and the review of materials, it provides more of a picture.
So I guess my concern would be, did we reach the people who we haven't been reaching with this survey, or did we reach people who've sort of been interacting with us and involved and going to the website and looking for the information? Because some of those numbers seem high to me. I was surprised when 48% of the people were using the website, or whatever that number was. That's in the newspaper at 42. They just seem, I think it doesn't surprise me if it's people that have been accessing and interacting with us already, but it does surprise me if it's just people that we've never really had contact with before. Do you have a comment there?
I wish I could tell you more, but it was a very cost-effective survey. We got 500 people to respond, so it does give you a window, but no, it wasn't statistically valid.
And you had a number up there, the Latino speaking, 20% of the population, and then you had that 15%. That was 15% of the 20%?
No, that's 50% of your total population.
So 75% of the Latinos.
Right.
Okay, that was one of my questions.
And I'll add that the federal guideline for translating information is when you have about 5 to 7% of your population speaking a certain language at home, the federal government recommends translations.
Okay. Then final question on the organizational structure we had, and probably Courtney, this is to you. What do we have here currently? I mean, we're looking at this chart where Gresham's using 5 people full-time, and Clackamas County was 15 and somebody else was 2 or 3, what are we?
So right now, we have a half-time person devoted to communications, and then we have a bunch of staff doing communications as part of their work, although it's not the primary function. And so what we'd like to do now is take a step back and look at the amount of resources we have devoted to communications throughout the city and think through how we might manage those in a different way if we need.
Yeah.
Can I back up and answer your last question a little bit? We actually, more than 30% of the folks who did take the survey were not aware of our website. So I think that's a pretty clear indication that we did reach some folks that we don't typically reach in terms of using the survey as a tool.
Okay. My final one would be, it's more of a comment on mobile friendly. It needs to be, are we going to be mobile friendly? I know we're working on the new website. That'll be mobile friendly?
Yes,
Yeah,
the new
that's a
website
plus.
will be
I mean,
mobile friendly.
It's almost over half of all accesses, I think, on the internet now are on a mobile device. So if we're not doing that, we're going to strike out no matter what we do. Thanks.
Counselor Bednarz, then Counselor Anderson, and then maybe that's it.
Just the comments, I'm just going to go down through the list. I had 4 questions, and the first one was, I looked for a logo, thecityofsalem.com, and you're right, there's an inconsistency. In fact, it says, one of them, it says City of Salem, I think it says at your service, and the other one says cityofsalem.com, and there is a definite inconsistency, although the Salem portion of that is all the same. It looks the same, but if you look it up closely, they're different. You hit the other, Councilor McQuaid hit my other question that I had about resizing. Have you ever thought about gleaning emails from the neighborhood associations? I have kept pushing to see if the neighborhood associations would provide emails. So there's a point of contact. These are people who are engaged. They're coming to the neighborhood associations. They're more apt to want to know what's going on in the community. Was that ever brought up?
In terms of doing a citywide mailing and increasing your mailings?
Increasing the exposure.
Increasing exposures through the neighborhood associations? Yes, that was brought up. It was brought up that the neighborhood associations are engaged and involved people. I heard other information about folks who are involved in the neighborhood associations may not be representative of their neighborhoods, but I did hear loud and clear, and I talked to some folks from the neighborhood associations, that they are engaged, educated, folks who know the history of the city and they know their community really well. Some of them are talking about putting together email lists.
But they're going to have the email list. The City of Salem, if they want to get their emails out to people, are going to have a master list that the city keeps of all these people.
Which would change all the time.
Which would change all the time, granted, but at least it's a source to get the message out. My last comment was, all the years that I've been here, I still find the City of Salem's website difficult to use. And a classic example is I was just trying to get to the maps, and I can never find the right map that I'm looking for. I know it's there. It's there somewhere, buried, and often we talk about, we're going to talk tonight, or I'm going to mention a little bit about the master planning of the Fairview Sustainable Park. And how do you get that? Well, it's not quite as easy. You have to, meander through the chain of tabs to get to it. But I don't know if there's a better way at all in the long term so that things like these can be found easier, quicker, less frustrating. Just a comment.
The community-centric website would actually be much more topic and content focused and less reliant on the city's organizational structure as a way to relay information that matters to people. So we have a whole plan for how that will roll out. And it is borne out in the survey as well. You can see through the web findings in particular, you can see what people are looking for from the website, and we're actually very aligned with the findings from the survey.
So when does the new website go on?
Its go live is in fall of this coming year.
Of 16?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Of this year.
The one we're in. Please.
Thank you.
Counselor Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A lot of the comments that I had, I'm just echoing what Councilor Bednarz and McCoy and Dickey have said, but a couple other issues. First one is I'm really concerned about the language issue as part of communication, because the trend for less English speakers is going up, not down, and we can see that, and we're already at 20%, and we're going to get higher and higher, so I think that's very crucial. whatever system we end up with, to make sure that we can easily communicate with all the citizens in our fair city, not just the folks who look pretty much like those of us sitting around the table here, the council table here. I also think, to me, I was very intrigued by, you showed up the Twitter and the Facebook and how, you know, it's use it or lose it. And we're certainly not using it. And so people aren't going to tune in if they come in and it's the same thing. So I think you mentioned the potential to sort of consolidate and put our focus on one method of communication, that then you would have, that would be the one for everybody to tune in. I echo the one logo situation, that we need to have something that people can recognize. And finally, I can't use the website either. I mean, I go in and I get frustrated, and I can't even find out who to call. If I want to call a department head, I go in there, and sometimes I can find it under the departments. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I type in the person's name, and then I get newspaper articles about them and releases about them. Even I type in the name and phone number, and that doesn't work. So, maybe I ought to put everything on my speed dial, but that's probably an archaic term, on my contacts list. But it needs to be more user-friendly. That's the complaint that I get continually when I talk to people about what's happening in the city. I say, well, go look at this, and said, I tried and I can't. It doesn't come up very easily for me.
All right, are there further questions? Oh, yes, Councilor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of things. Some of it came up in the neighborhood task force meetings 8, 10, a lot of years ago, in regard to the Latino community and what have you as well, as far as feeling welcome and what have you. They tend to move in a family unit, and the neighborhood association really have no means to have like childcare or activities for the younger folk, which I don't know if we've necessarily talked about since that whole process wrapped up. But then I think it was around the same time we talked about the language barriers as well, and it was brought up that folks that they speak Spanish, but they don't necessarily do a good job of reading any language. Is there numbers anywhere?
I don't have numbers for Salem, but what you bring up is a legitimate issue.
If you look at how many people access a website, well, if I'm really not a good reader in any language, I'm not necessarily going to go where I have to read. I need some audio.
That's right. It really relates to an individual program, individual communication goals or project, and the community that you're working within. And it would be nice to be able to have a blanket approach for everything, but it's not possible. It's really not possible. So if you're doing something in one part of Salem, you really need to look at your audience in that part of Salem. You need to look at what the goals of your program or project are, who's affected by it, and then figure out how those folks want to be communicated with. A lot of times it means going and doing face-to-face type of
and that was
engagement.
Actually brought up at the time to try to get people more involved with neighborhood associations in that respect.
Right.
And then we had a split on I-5 as far as demographics as well. In the survey, how did people say this is where I live, or is that just straight demographics? Do we know if any of the people who replied to the survey are actually residents inside of the Salem city limits?
Yes.
Because we have two big chunks, and I noted that in the demographic maps as well, in the Jan Ray and Four Corners areas. Are we counting people inside the urban growth boundary, or kind of city limits on some of that?
I'll have to look a little more into the data,
Okay.
and then and see what we can pull out of it. It'll be hard for me to find while I'm sitting
Sure.
right here, but we can look into that.
Because that may have some difference as well based on percentages on some of the responses.
That's right. It's
potentially.
true.
We still need to talk to people that are inside of our urban growth boundary, because they'll eventually be part of us. And if we're doing something with police as far as, these roads are blocked up, I mean, that's just communicating with the public.
Right.
Not necessarily city residents. and travelers, because we have a lot coming in and going out as well.
Counselor Dickey? Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Lewis and then Counselor Dickey.
Yeah, I'll ask this way. I know when we did the interview, I said that I thought you would find people in Salem that saw the cup half empty, saw the cup half full, and that my concern was that you would find people that saw the cup half empty with a leak. So now after doing your research, I'm real curious to know if in fact that was true, and if so, how prevalent that was, because my concern is that there are folks in Salem that just really struggle to see the city doing anything well. And those are the ones that I perceive that see the cup half empty with a leak.
It's always full, partially the gas phase, partially.
I think that there may have been some people who said there was a half empty with a leak, but it was very few and far between. When I talked to people, one, they were really happy, I'm not sure about happy, but really respectful of the process and willing to participate, and gave very thoughtful answers. Not one person did I talk to that treated me disrespectfully or treated the city disrespectfully. Did some of them have constructive criticism? Absolutely, they did. And you can read the report and the chapter on the stakeholder interviews to really hear about that. I think everybody that I talked to really wanted to see Salem thrive and to be, the people I talked to live here. I didn't talk to people who didn't live here. So they want to see the city be successful, and people had different ideas about that. A lot of people saw the cup as half full.
Thanks.
Good. Great. Counselor Dickey?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on Councilor Nanke's comments about, if people live inside the city limits or outside the city limits. We do have a lot of people that are customers that do not live inside the city limits. So they could be water customers and Jan Ray, and they're, so that we do have a need to communicate with them, or, if we needed to get information to people who are working in the city during the day. They may not live here. Maybe, we have some sort of issue. We need to get information out. So I think, I think it's important to hear from our stakeholders, people who are, paying our salaries, so to speak, right? So, but we do, yeah, just kidding. Which is nothing, but we do have a number of people that we do business with on a daily basis that don't necessarily live in our city limits, but it's important that we're able to communicate information to them.
Great. Counselor McCoy and then Counselor Bennett.
So are there recommendations that are going to be coming from you, or what are the next steps? One of the two, or both?
I'm going to have Courtney answer that one.
So the next steps are that we have a management team is working through some of these findings and recommendations and planning for what can be accomplished in the near term, perhaps even in this coming year's budget, and then what kinds of things we would need to stage for longer term transition, probably into next year's budget, and then longer term beyond that as well. So what can we do with the resources we have now in the near term, in the short term, and in the longer term? So we're working on that now, and that will all be part of the strategic plan, which is the next step.
Strategic communications plan.
The strategic communications plan based on these findings and the council goal and the direction that we've gotten to date.
Okay. All right. Well, it occurs to me that perhaps a great way to learn what the various other cultural and ethnic and religious groups in the community would like to be able to communicate with the city by, and how they communicate with the city, would be to have a presentation at the Mayor's International Council meeting, because we have people who represent 15 different nations and organizations, and anytime that language is a topic, it's welcomed and they're very engaged. So I'd love to talk with you about coming and meeting them and making a presentation and really gathering from them what might be good ways to reach out into the other communities.
Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. Counselor Nanki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one last thing. The glass is never empty. It's always full in some phase or another, liquid, solid, or gas. And then finally, just in regards to our website and the city council agenda, I know because every now and again I read staff reports that I want to go back over on my phone. It doesn't take you to a page, it downloads it, which drives me crazy. So you'll see the little arrow going, and then you got to go pick your document up somewhere else, and then you got to figure out how to erase them versus just taking you straight to a page. And if I want to drop 3 or 4 of them, then it's like, it's nice to be able to just go to the page. So just a point of note for down the road to see if IT can handle that.
All right, if that concludes questions and discussions, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the research and the work that you've been doing, and we look forward to more information coming in the months ahead.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a break, and everybody can get kind of readjusted a little bit, and then we'll start with the Housing Authority meeting.
You want me to lead a stretch and flex?
Commissioner Bennett?
Here.
Commissioner McCoy?
Here.
Commissioner Dickey? Here. Commissioner Benjamin?
Here.
Commissioner Bednarz?
Here.
Commissioner Lewis?
Here.
Commissioner Karavayev is absent. Chair McCoy.
Here again.
And Commissioner Nanki is here as well.
Okay, so I'll take the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Stand.
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now since I've become the chair of the Salem Housing Authority, do we need to elect a new vice chair? Commissioner Nanki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would nominate Commissioner Lewis.
So we have a second? It's been moved by Commissioner Nanki, seconded by Commissioner Bednarz to elect Commissioner Lewis to the position of vice chair. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There you go. Motion passes. Congratulations for the great campaign there, Commissioner Lewis.
I had a sign.
Okay, Commissioner Lewis, do you have a motion for us on approval of additions and deletions?
I don't see any,
We don't have any.
additions or deletions, so I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second. Been moved and seconded for approval of the consent calendar. Andy, you have anything to say?
I do really briefly on the program management report. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have in the initial document, sorry about that, front page of the program management report, I noted that we're increasing the number of vouchers that we're allocating to homelessness. We get about 30 to 40 vouchers per month returned to us. And so this is about, it's going to increase to about a total out of our vouchers, between 360 and 480 per annum, right? So, and that's a range of 12% to 16% of all of our vouchers come back on an annual basis. So we're trying to do more, increasing the domestic violence vouchers that we put out through the social service agencies, as well as 10 per month vouchers for at-risk and homeless families, individuals.
Commissioner Bednarz?
I just wanted to say thank you for the report. I look forward to it. This is one of the issues that I've been taking on and looking at, the homeless initiative. That I hope that you are partaking, at least in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot of money that's being spent, and it seems to me that there's not a lot of people being helped because of the strings that go along with those funds. And I want to see what we can do to help end that. And I think part of that is going to be you, because you know you're in the system. You know what's going on. So I hope you do attend some of those meetings that'll come up. I think February 17th.
Yes, sir.
So, thank you.
I'm actually engaged as a subject matter, I don't know, expert's the right word, but a subject matter additive. And so I will be at both meetings and had a chance to put some information into the program for the 27th. So I look forward to that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, there's no special orders of business. We have to take action on the motion. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on, there's no special orders of business, no unfinished business, and no new business. So this meeting is adjourned.
Nice hand there. Yeah.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to this evening's meeting of the Salem Urban Renewal Agency for February 8th, 2016. Would the recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Bennett?
Here.
Board Member Anderson?
Present.
Board Member Nanki?
Here.
Board Member McCoy?
Here.
Board Member Dickey?
Here.
Board Member Benjamin?
Here.
Board Member Benards?
Here.
Board Member Lewis?
Here.
Chair Peterson?
Here. Thank you. I will need a motion for approval of additions and deletions to the agenda. Member McCoy, do you have a motion?
I move approval of additions and deletions to the agenda.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Member McCoy and seconded by Member Bednarz to accept the additions, deletions, and revisions. Is there discussion? Would you like to describe those, Member McCoy?
We've got the minutes and the action items. We've got an increase of funds for the...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner McCoy, this
I
is
was asking about if there were additions or deletions.
there aren't
Okay,
any.
these are just for the city council meeting, not for the agency. All right, sorry, all right. All right, then we have no additions or deletions. So we will move to public comment. Has anyone signed up for this? All right, okay, Member McCoy, now is time for a motion regarding the consent calendar.
Yeah, you're picking on the rookie here.
I'm sorry.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved by Member McCoy, seconded by Member Bednarz to adopt the consent calendar. Would you now like to discuss what's on the consent calendar?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The item we've got here is an increasing funds for the North Gateway Urban Renewal Area Toolbox Grant and Loan Program. Those have been successful and drawn down the budget for the year, so there's been an additional amount of money put in both the Toolbox Grant and the Loan Program to be used by businesses to improve their businesses in that area. And the amounts, $100,000 to the Toolbox Grant and $100,000 to the Toolbox Loan Program.
If I may. I believe that item was in the minutes for the last meeting, so the only item on the consent calendar are the minutes for the meetings and item 4.3A, the URA financial report.
That's last meeting.
Okay.
It is? It says action item.
I think that's... Yeah.
Help me right here. All right, bro. We'll be right here with you.
Okay.
I think it's this.
Why don't we just move along?
Oh, there's this, and the summary in here?
Yeah. So just
Sorry, I was on the wrong agenda. No wonder I was having so many problems.
Well, it is confusing for all of us.
Oh,
not
yeah,
just
well,
for you.
especially for an old Irish guy.
Yeah, no.
Actually, we've got Urban Renewal Agency financial report coming up here, and the minutes. There's what's in here, so.
Okay. All right, so the motion on the floor is to adopt the consent calendar. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And in your agenda tonight, in the information reports, there's a fiscal year 14-15 financial audit, and you probably have all received a copy of that. And then also the Joint Finance Committee and Urban Renewal Agency minutes are in your agendas. Were there any questions about those two information reports? Councillor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll just bring it all up now rather than now and at the council meeting. We do have representatives of our auditor here, and our finance folks are in chambers as well. In regards to the financial reports and audit reports, we look good. No findings, which is always a good thing. And then in both the Urban Renewal Agency financial reports as well as city, I would encourage people to just check out management's discussion and analysis. In the case of the Urban Renewal Agency, starts on page 13. And basically, it will give you a great rundown on the status of the urban renewal districts, as well as with City Council, what the status of finances and operations are inside of city as a whole. So those are also available on our website.
All right. Thank you. And you chair the Finance Committee, as I remember.
Yes, for
All right.
15 years.
I think that you're doing a good job. Appreciate you chairing that committee. All right. We have no special orders of business and no public hearing for the Urban Renewal Agency, so this agency meeting is adjourned. I would now like to call to order this evening's meeting of the Salem City Council for February 8th, 2016. Would the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Bennett?
Here.
Counselor Anderson?
Here.
Counselor Nanke?
Here.
Counselor McCoy?
Here.
Counselor Dickey? Here. Counselor Benjamin?
Here.
Counselor Bednarz?
Here.
Counselor Lewis?
Here.
Mayor Peterson?
Here. Thank you. Now, I know for this meeting that we have additions, deletions, changes, forgetfuls, everything else. So I do need a motion to adopt the additions, deletions, and revisions.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the additions and deletions to the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Councillor McCoy and seconded by Councillor Bednarz to approve the additions, deletions, and revisions. And is there discussion on these items? Are there any questions on the additions and deletions? Okay. Mostly testimony that came in. It looks like a supplemental staff report on action item 3.3C is one of the items, and then also on 3.3C, further written testimony that we've received, and 4.B with regard to the public hearing on a sign variance. There is a request for continuance from the applicant, and all of that is in these packets on our desks. Okay, any questions about any of those? All right, the motion on the floor is to approve the deletions. How about that? The deletions, the additions, and the revisions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, time for council and city manager comment. Councilors, any comments this evening? Councillor Bednarz and then Councillor, was it Nanke? Thank you.
I had two tonight that I wanted to talk about. First, this last Wednesday, February 3rd, I was able to attend at the Pringle Hall a a meeting talking about the purchase, well, not the purchase, but the development of the 29 acres of land out at the Fairview Sustainable into a new park. And so there is a survey out there. You can go to the City of Salem's website, cityofsalem.net. And unfortunately, I can't get to it on my computer because whatever that system is, it won't let me download the little drop-down menu, as we were talking about in our work session just a few minutes ago. But in there, you can find a link to the survey. It's a great thing. The next time they're going to have another vignette of some sort will be Wednesday, March 16th at 6:30, also at Pringle Hall. Welcome people to come. This is a regional park, meaning that it's going to be much more than just simply a playground and some grass. We're talking about baseball or soccer fields, bathrooms, lighting, that kind of thing. It's supposed to be a regional draw at that point. So that's why it's a big deal to come in and take a look at the master plan for that particular area. Second thing that I wanted to talk about, a much more serious of note, it was last weekend, last Wednesday of January, I was able, with my wife and I, we were able to go out and do the homeless count around the city of Salem. I did the same thing last year, and well, we went in the afternoon before and didn't have much luck. This year we went early in the day, and we had fairly good luck. We did run into 9 individuals, 5 of whom were willing to be interviewed, 4 did not want to be interviewed. It took us to the intersection of Division and Commercial there were 4 panhandlers there that were homeless. And it also took us to there were the new boat ramp in West Salem. Actually walked back the fencing and go way back in along Highway 22 and found several more people that we could interview. It's a fascinating story. I won't take up the time here to tell what I heard, but there's a lot of reasons why people are homeless. And I never did feel threatened by any of the people, no matter where I was. I felt very welcome. In fact, they just wanted to express their concern, and we told them this is one of the reasons that we do the homeless count, is so that we can get federal dollars to come back in our community to help support the homeless or people who are having difficulty finding permanent home. Anyway, so
Great.
2 things. It was really nice. Recommended,
you.
by the way. And if you want to do it next year, it's the last Wednesday of January, and I would contact Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency. There's a class earlier in the week. It doesn't take much to go through, but protocol would be cautious of, but that kind of thing. But it's really fascinating.
Wonderful, thank you. As we begin the work that we're undertaking with the Homeless Initiative, having that new data will be particularly helpful. So thank you for participating in that. Councillor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Paradise Village Mobile Home Park Community Center is the SEMCA Neighborhood Association meeting. Just because they fall back to back here, it's always good to get a plug into them, since we don't send out information citywide on a lot of them, save for electronically as well. That's the Southeast Mill Creek Neighborhood Association. Then Wednesday night at 6:30 at the Fairview property. Painters Hall is the Morningside Neighborhood Association on the 2nd Wednesday of the month as well. And I also participated over the weekend, and I sacrificed myself just to see how the event went. The Winter Brew Fest out in front of the Capitol. It was well attended and some good music, as well as good food and libation.
Great. I heard it was a big hit. Wonderful, wonderful. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have full information on this, but I did notice over the weekend there was another car pedestrian accident. I think it was on 17th.
It was.
Just highlight, and I couldn't find it again in the Statesman online today. I just saw the blurb, and I don't know what's happened to that person, and I wasn't able to contact. I was busy doing other work today, and I wasn't able to contact the police chief or someone else. But this again just highlights the issue we've been talking about. We've got a serious problem with pedestrian safety and, by extension, bicycle safety here in the town, and I know we're working on it, and I hope we continue to work on it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for commenting about that. Other councillor comments? I'd like to say how pleased I was to attend the Salem Multicultural Institute's exhibit opening on Saturday night. It's an exhibit that features a particular part of central Mexico, and it's a very informative exhibit with textiles and photographs and implements from historically, from their historic use there, as well as current day weaving supplies and cooking supplies and all sorts of things that make that culture special within the entire country of Mexico. So I encourage people to see that exhibit. It's at the Reed Opera House on the first floor. And City Manager, do you have comments to share?
I do. Reminder or information for those who are photographers. The city is hosting I Love Salem photo contest for people who live, work, or play in Salem. You can submit your favorite photograph of Salem for the contest. Please submit to photos@cityofsalem.net. That's photos@cityofsalem.net by Monday, February 29th, 2016. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have 2 proclamations this evening. I'm so excited about the numbers of people who've come this evening to be with us for the proclamations. I'm going to start with the one that has to do with the AgFest. It's actually Mid-Valley Winter AgFest, and I would invite them to actually come down to that area, and I'm going to bring the portable mic. It's really exciting when people come to council to help us tell the rest of the world about a special activity or organization or event. So I'm very pleased that you're all here this evening. That would be fine. I think that there are enough of us here. We'll all just kind of gather around. Is this on? Is it working? Is it good? Okay. All right, here we are. Come on down. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. This is wonderful. This is wonderful. Okay. Thank you. So I want to particularly note and introduce to you Polk County Commissioner Jennifer Wheeler. Will you please step forward here? This is Commissioner Wheeler, and she is very actively working with the Mid-Valley Winter AgFest, as well as also I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for being one of the founders of the Mid-Valley Homeless Initiative. We'll be working hand in hand for a year on that project. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your attention and the work you've already been doing to help the plight of the homeless. Thank you. So this evening, I have several people here to introduce Future Farmers of America Youth, Cameron Smartwood. Is Cameron here? There's Cameron. And we have in the 4-H group, youth group, Mary Berger, Molly Berger. No, all right, these are names I was given. Ira McBeth, Sierra McBeth, and Cole Setnecker. All right, I'm glad you're here with us as well. Okay. Whereas Oregon's farmers and ranchers make an important contribution to the Oregon economy by ensuring a safe and reliable food supply, improving energy security, and supporting job growth and economic development. Whereas agriculture is Salem's #1 economic engine and is also particularly important to the economies of small towns and rural areas where farming supports a number of sectors from farm machinery manufacturing to food processing plants, provides local jobs, and supports local businesses through the purchase of goods and services. Whereas over 60% of the farms in Oregon are all small operation farms with less than 50 acres. Whereas the last census in Polk County, which includes a portion of the city of Salem, had 1,143 farms and was one of the top 10 counties in agricultural sales. Whereas the Mid-Valley Winter AgFest has as one of its main goals the promotion of local farm commerce and agricultural education, particularly at the county level. Whereas the Mid-Valley Winter AgFest is open to local farm and artisan vendors to sell their wares, with one of the centerpieces of the Winter AgFest being a Farmers Bounty Market and Artisan Fair. And whereas the Mid-Valley Winter AgFest will provide educational opportunities, including seminars with topics pertinent to regional farms and ranches. Now therefore I, Anna Peterson, the mayor of the city of Salem, hereby proclaim February 27 and 28, 2016 to be Mid-Valley Winter AgFest weekend. And I encourage all residents of Marion County, Polk County, the city of Salem, to attend the Mid-Valley Winter AgFest in the Polk County Fairgrounds to promote and support our local farmers and ranchers and celebrate the resurgence of the family farm. Thank you so much for being here and for all the work that you're doing to promote agriculture. It's very exciting to have you in our chambers. Now, I know I have a lady here to speak, and I have to apologize because now I've lost your name. I'm sorry. This is Deb Thomas. Deb, do you want to say a couple words?
I just want to thank everyone from 4-H and FFA for attending tonight, and all the parents for bringing, and Jennifer for coming. That was wonderful. We're going to have a wide range of events at the AgFest. The Antique Powerland is participating. There's going to be a Northwest train display. As I said, a number of agricultural organizations, Polk Women for Agriculture, the Farm Bureau, Farmers Ending Hunger, a number of other agriculture organizations are going to be there participating all weekend long. And they're just going to be, we're going to have a lot of fun. There's just a lot of things going on. The museum, Polk County Museum and Historical Society is partnering with us. They're extending their hours, and Dr. Sherry Knoxall from the Austin Family Business Program, sponsored by SEDCOR, is going to present she's basically our keynote speaker, and she's going to speak on family succession planning for small and medium farms, very pertinent topic. Number of other agricultural speakers. There's a whole seminar list. Dr. Faust from BioAg, Jennifer, Amy Garrett from Small Farm Extension is going to be doing a seminar on small farm irrigation, but there's a number of other pertinent agriculturally oriented seminars, and we have a list on our website. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And the website is www.
It's a tongue twister.
Okay.
It's the formal name, of course, is midvalleywinteragfest.com, and it's mvwagfest.com. And it'll be completely updated by Friday when the first Capital Press advertising comes out.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for being here and helping us to share the word about the Mid-Valley AgFest. Thank you so much. And I'm going to present this to you. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. You're welcome. All right. We have a second proclamation. We have a second proclamation, so I'm going to go over to this side and ask you three to please come here and join me. This is a proclamation for the Future Business Leaders of America, the Phi Beta Lambda chapter. So if you'll come and join me here, I understand that there were going to be maybe 4 of you, but 2 are here, and I'm so pleased you are. Tell us your names.
My name is Sixto Bogarin Covarrubias.
Monica Ortiz.
Lovely. I'm glad to have you both here. And I'm going to read this proclamation and present that to you. Whereas Future Business Leaders of America, Phi Beta Lambda, is a nonprofit educational organization whose first chapter was established in Johnson City, Tennessee in 1942. Whereas this organization has grown now to encompass over 250,000 members and advisors nationwide in high schools, colleges, universities, career and technical schools, and private business schools. Whereas North Salem High School, Future Business Leaders of America, Chapter 79, was first established in 1949 and was one of the first chapters on the West Coast, and it's now serving over 70 students. Whereas Future Business Leaders of America, Phi Beta Lambda, is a professional business organization dedicated to bringing business and education together in a positive working relationship through innovative leadership and career development programs. Whereas members perform community service activities and strive to build a student's understanding of the realities of the modern business world. Whereas Future Business Leaders of America teaches high school students basic business and leadership skills and helps students to make the transition from high school to work or college. Now therefore I, Anna Peterson, Mayor of the City of Salem, do proclaim the week of February 8th through 12th as National FBLA Week and encourage all citizens of Salem to join in recognition of the Future Business Leaders of America and its positive impact on the young adults in our community. Congratulations for the work that you're doing with your group. Let's get a picture of you with the proclamation. Here you are. All right, we will now move on to public comment, and it looks like we have quite a few people who've signed up. It's always wonderful when people come to City Council to share their views and their information, so we look forward to this evening. Usually what I do is to call 2 names at a time, and that way we can use both podiums and kind of keep it moving along. So this evening we'll start with Richard Hatch and Amy Spingloff. Oh, thank you. All right. There you are, one on each side, and we'll get started. Mr. Hatch, are you? Yeah, there you are. And you'll have 3 minutes. At the end of 2 minutes, the amber light comes on. At the end of 3 minutes, the red light comes on. And we do ask that you give your name and address or your ward. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Richard Hatch. I live at 156 Front Street, number 400, in downtown Salem, and that's the Rivers Condominiums. And I'm here tonight to speak to the item on the agenda for establishing a quiet zone along the railroad tracks at the Riverfront Park area. The crossings included that we proposed for the quiet zone include Union Street, Court Street, and State Street. There have been no recorded accidents at these crossings. The maximum permitted train speed is 10 miles per hour. The nationwide significant risk threshold, is 14,347. That sounds kind of complicated there, but what it does is it analyzes the crossings all across the United States and compares these crossings with those crossings. The proposed quiet zone risk index is 4,083. That is only 28% of the threshold item. So based on that, no supplemental safety measures are needed to be added to these crossings for the proposed quiet zone. The only cost that should be incurred is the installation of 6 18 by 24-inch traffic control signs that states that the whistle doesn't blow from the trains. Those signs cost about $75 each plus installation. The Federal Railroad Administration requires the quiet zone to be a minimum of 1/2 mile in length and is to include at least one public grade crossing. There is no mention in the federal regulations that the quiet zone extend 1/4 mile from either side of a crossing. The train must sound its horn between 15 and 20 seconds before a crossing, but the maximum horn sounding distance cannot exceed 1/4 mile, 1,320 feet, from the crossing. Therefore, if a train is traveling 10 miles an hour, it must sound its horn between a distance of 220 feet and 294 feet from the crossing. The Union Street crossing is 375 feet from the Front Street crossing. Therefore, if the Front Street crossing is not included, the proposed quiet zone, its whistleblowing area, will not overlap into the proposed quiet zone. As I mentioned earlier, there have been no accidents at these crossings that have been recorded. Personal observation is last summer, I was observing the train heading south. He approached the State Street crossing. At the speed they travel, he noticed there was a package laying across the tracks and on the roadway. He stopped the train. The engineer walked down the ramp off the train, went and moved the package to the side, and got back on the train.
I have to draw
kept
your
going.
attention that your time is up.
My time is up.
That's okay. If you can wrap up kind of quickly.
I'll wrap up quickly.
Okay.
We have a lot of people living in the downtown area. We have 28 units in our condo. We have the new South Block units that are 175, I think. And we have the Meridian. I'm not sure how many is there at the Meridian. But we have a lot of people here tonight and a lot more that would have joined us. They're busy elsewhere. You guys can stand up and let or raise your hand and let us know who's supporting this measure. I sure appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very
you.
much. Are there questions from counselors?
That's a good thing.
Counselor Benjamin?
Is that somewhat, would it be okay to have a quiet zone in the evening but not during the day?
There are locations that do that. For this area, I don't think that's necessary. I think a full-time quiet zone is appropriate.
Okay. All right. Other questions of counselors? Counselor Bednarz.
I just had a quick question. Are you aware that even with the quiet zone that they're allowed to blow their horns?
Yes, that's written in the federal regulations. Right. If the engineer notices a problem, he can blow his horn.
Right. I just wanted to make sure you had that one down, so just knowing, hey, we thought we had it. No, we don't. Well, that's a good reason. Safety.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for coming and testifying. Appreciate this so much. All right. Amy Spingath, and followed by Tobiah Spingath.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Let me begin by saying that my family, which owns 7 acres of land along Marine Drive stretch, is ready to give the city the opportunity to buy the right-of-way for Marine Drive tomorrow. We know the voters approved $3.6 million to purchase the right-of-way years ago, and we bought our place looking forward to that purchase for the future. We feel that the promise made to the voters, that the promise would be broken should the money go to purchase other properties. I grew up in West Salem. I love West Salem. It's awesome. The development of the properties all around us has been done in a very tasteful way, and as a family, we feel that our area, along with our neighbors, could be developed into a large multifamily zone very well. It would integrate right in. So we just urge you to consider purchasing up the right-of-way while it's available, while we're looking to sell, because the opportunity might not be there in the future if the funds go elsewhere. So as soon as the money for the right-of-way is available, we would be ready to sell, basically.
All right. Thank you. Are there questions from counselors? All right. Thank you very much. Tobiah, did I say that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Madam Mayor, council members, and ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tobias Spingath, and I live as a resident on 1460 Wallace Road. I am Amy's cousin, and I also represent my aunt and uncle who live at 1460 Wallace Road. The property is located north of 7-Eleven, just up Wallace Road, and I come to speak on opposing item 3.3C. I am a runner as my uncle. I work at Courthouse Athletic Club in West Salem. I appreciate the network of trails where I can run and take my 6-year-old son for a long, safe bike ride. My aunt and uncle are both employed in natural resources field and intend to keep the wooded area outside the urban growth boundary. Below in the floodplain, east of the Marine Drive Road right-of-way as a conservation area. If there were a bike trail along Marine Drive and access to the wooded area to Wallace Marine Park, amateur athletes like myself would have several more miles of trail for recreation. Last month, I put over 1,200 miles of running, just in the Salem area alone. Fortunately, the approved plan for the Marine Drive is for a 12-foot wide multi-use trail on the east side of the road that can be used by bicyclists, walkers, and runners. By releasing the funds to purchase Marine Drive right-of-way, West Salem has the opportunity to increase the livability of a part of the city that will soon have many more people living in it. I know my aunt and uncle are eager to get this sale underway and know they are ready to sell immediately. Madam Mayor, council members, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your testimony. Are there questions? All right. Thank you for coming down. Appreciate that. Jim Shepke, followed by Kathleen Dewana.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Jim Shepke and I live in Ward 2. I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of a group of citizens opposed to the third bridge. We're called No Third Bridge. We have about 50 active members and about 360 likes on our Facebook page. I'm here tonight to speak to item 3.3C, and I want to urge you not to approve the staff recommendation to use Streets and Bridges bonds money to purchase right-of-way for the third bridge in the Highland neighborhood. I have a handout at each of your place, and what this is on this side of the handout, it's a two-sided handout. It shows you the city fact sheet from 2008 that was provided to voters before we voted on the Streets and Bridges bond. It says very clearly that that this money will be used to purchase future street and highway right-of-way once a preferred alternative alignment is approved by the Federal Highway Administration. And of course, those of us who know what that means, it means that the Federal Highway Administration has approved a final environmental impact statement and has issued a record of decision. That has not happened. In fact, the official schedule for the Salem River crossing says that the soonest that could happen would be in 2017. So we believe it would be totally inappropriate to go against what the voters were told in 2008 and to use Streets and Bridges bond money to purchase right-of-way in the Highland neighborhood for the third bridge. The second point I'd like to make is on the back of your handout, and this is the official recommended funding strategy for the third bridge. It was developed at the last meeting of the oversight team in December of 2014, over a year ago. That was the last time they met. It was never formally adopted as far as we can tell, but it was posted on the Salem River Crossing website in March of 2015. And what it does is summarize the official funding strategy for the third bridge. As you can see, I've highlighted for you that the funding strategy includes a 6 cent a gallon gas tax, a $25 a year surcharge on vehicle registration, a 37 cents per thousand property tax increase, and a $1.50 toll on all three bridges. And I don't think you should be buying land for this until you've had a thorough discussion of this and a deliberation on this and a public hearing on this. Because I think once the public learns what the strategy is for funding the third bridge, you're going to hear about it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Questions of councilors. Councilor Lewis?
Thanks for coming down, Mr. Chipley. I just want to make sure, once the record of decision is filed, assuming that that's May of 2017, then you would say it would be all right for the city to use the Streets and Bridges bond money for the purchase of the right-of-way on the east side of the river?
That would be exactly what it says right here.
So you would agree with that?
Yeah.
At that time, we could use the money to do that?
I just think this, which was given to voters, saying this is what we're going to use the money for, folks, in 2008, you can't go against this. It would break faith with the voters, and I think would jeopardize future bond elections that the city might put up. So I think you really need to adhere very strictly to this.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Kathleen Dewana?
I'm Kathleen Dewana. I live at 1045 Fifth Street Northeast in Salem, and thank you
for the opportunity to address you regarding the Marine Drive right-of-way acquisition from Streets and Bridges Bonds. The Marine Drive project is complex. It's involving numerous owners, numerous jurisdictions, land inside and outside the urban growth boundary, land inside and outside the city limits, and really extensive public benefits. Traffic safety, bicycle route connectivity, community connection, even the potential for some conservation easements and better use of our lands. The broad community benefits of the project justify development by the community. Because of the small size of many parcels, the development process may not in and of itself be able to fund this street and the work that we want there. So it's a tough decision when you're spending a pile of money. When I work with my clients in real estate and investment, that tough decision-making process is really a three-step process. It involves knowledge, it involves understanding, and then it involves some wisdom. So the knowledge is usually understanding all the facts, the significant market figures, the financial data, investing. And then the understanding is the client assessing their own interest. You, the council, are clients assessing the variety of perspectives on the relevant data. And then finally, the decision is what is that? What is the best interest for the investment among competing wants and needs for your business or your family budget? And so when you apply the same kind of test to the Marine Drive, we know that staff have thoroughly studied this. We know what the costs are, and we know many of the benefits. The understanding is I would encourage you to drive along Marine Drive, drop off, drive into one of the driveways between the 1400 and 1700 block, and then turn around and try and come back downtown. You'll realize how horrendously dangerous it is. None of that land east of Wallace Road is available for development until we have other accesses, other ways of flowing away from Wallace Road. We have significant needs for land for residential, multifamily residential development in the area. Marine Drive will open that land to fill those needs. Another benefit, walk or bike across the railroad bridge, head north from Wallace Park, head north, and imagine being able to go 10, 12 miles further.
Yeah.
Huge benefit there.
I have to draw your attention to the red light.
It's the red light.
Can you wrap up?
I will wrap up really, really quickly. I'll jump to the end here. I believe the Marine Drive right-of-way acquisition and development is the investment that will give the greatest returns for the remaining streets and bridges and bonds money. And I thank you for listening to my request for this.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your testimony and you coming down. Are there questions for Ms. Dewana? All right, nice to see you. Thanks for being here. Okay, Ron Kellerman, followed by E.M. Easterly. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, fellow council members. I'm here in support of your initiative to install a railroad quiet zone. And I want to particularly thank Councilor Bennett and those that have supported him in these efforts. Salem has been undergoing a very exciting transformation over the last few years. I live in the Meridian, 777 Commercial Street. Just on our side of the building, which abuts the tracks, there are 60 human beings there who often sleep with their windows open and have the trains go by at night. We have the South Block apartments that have just opened up, and they're building more there. And then, of course, we have our neighbors to the north at the Rivers Condos. This is a quality of life thing that you can do to make Salem better and to make living downtown more attractive to more people, cutting down on all these additional infrastructure needs you need for transportation and everything else if people live closer into town. Most of the railroad engineers are very courteous, but every once in a while, like last night at 2 o'clock in the morning and one at 6:15 this morning, You have a couple of really jerk engineers that have to play by the book and lay on the horn the entire distance, all the way from Cherry Avenue down to Minto Island. And I would strongly encourage you to establish this zone, at least from the railroad bridge, the pedestrian railroad bridge, which is Union or Division Street, down to Minto Island Bridge. That'll be a tremendous enhancement in our quality of life here in downtown Salem. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I heard those whistles at the same time you did, and they were long last night.
And it was a warm
2
night.
a.m.
We had our windows open. So.
I know, well, we did too. So are there questions from counselors? All right, thank you. We really appreciate you coming down and preparing your testimony. Mr. Easterly, followed by Brian Hines.
Good evening, Mayor Peterson, members of council. E.M. Easterly, 775 Fir Gardens Northwest. Earlier today, I submitted a 2-page memo detailing my concerns and reservations about the Public Works Marine Drive 2008 Bond Funds Utilization Report and recommendations. I support a portion of those recommendations, but not all. It's been more than 18 years since Marine Drive and the associated linking streets were placed in the Salem Transportation System Plan. The time is right. The monies are available. Please use the 2008 bond funds to make Marine Drive an actual street right-of-way. Indeed, purchase of the remaining sections of the entire right-of-way from Herritt Drive to Glen Creek Road was estimated at less than $2.6 billion in the 2015 report, well within the $3.6 million available bond funds. Accordingly, I request that the total allocation of the 2008 bond proceeds be used to, quote, purchase right-of-way for future streets, and that none of the funds be allocated for construction. I also request that any final council decision relating to the report be postponed until the West Salem Neighborhood Association has been able to respond to the report recommendations. The Neighborhood Association at its February 1st meeting placed the pending report issued on February 4th on the 15th of February agenda item. Thank you for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony and your research. Councillor Lewis.
Thanks for coming down, EM. So let's continue the conversation. If we spend $2.5 million on acquiring right-of-way, which is really nothing more than a piece of paper.
Agreed.
Then I fail to see how that helps alleviate today's congestion on Wallace Boulevard. If on the other hand, we take a section of proposed Marine Drive, purchase the right-of-way, and build the street, and possibly even the connection from Marine Drive to Wallace Boulevard, then I see a possibility of alleviating congestion on Wallace Boulevard. So why can't you agree with that?
Thank you, Councilman Lewis. I appreciate when people put me on the post. Since you haven't described what you mean as a connection between Wallace Road and the future Marine Drive, I'm a little reluctant to even try and logically respond to your quest. We could go through all the permutations, and if we were to look back over a lot of things, including back to 1997, and what was said then and what came through as an officially designed alignment right-of-way, there's still a lot of questions and pieces there. So while I'm not going to immediately say, no, I can't or won't respond to it, there are too many pieces here bouncing around in terms of the process. Would I like to see the road built? Absolutely. It's 18 plus. 6 months, it'll be 19 years since this whole concept was started. There are pieces that have fallen by the wayside. Part of that is connected with the economy that all of Salem and all of Oregon and all the United States have faced over the last 7, 8, 9 years. However, the point I'd like to make to the whole council here is this is something that needs to be done. There has to be facilitation of a process that a prior council said this is important to Salem. Now, there's no magic formula that says if you buy the territory. We heard some people testify earlier saying, well, if you happen to buy that territory, you know, a strip of land, however wide it is, that it might facilitate somebody developing the land, which will then create the economic incentives and the requirements to pave that street. I can give you examples of 3 pieces of property that have been developed over the last 18 years that have conditions that say when the street is ready, you have to pave it. Those are there. That's part of the process. If development is then suggested and asked for by property owners in whatever version along this mile plus land, part of the conditions of development is thou shalt, in whatever form it may be. However, if you actually purchase the right-of-way, you're in a position of saying, gee, Mr. Developer, Ms. Developer, you must give us this land, and then you must help pave it. Well, if you've already purchased it, all you then have to say is you must help pave it. Those are just some ideas, Councilman Lewis, that I offer for you and your colleagues on the council to consider as you weigh these issues.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councilor Lewis?
So far.
So far, so good. All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate your testimony. All right. Brian Hines, followed by Pam Rimmer.
Hello, Brian Hines, 10371 Lake Drive Southeast. I'm speaking in opposition, as Mr. Shepke did, to the acquisition of right-of-way for the bridgehead in the Highland neighborhood. My testimony that I sent to the council yesterday got truncated in the written materials, so if you're wondering why it doesn't make complete sense, we'll figure that out with the recorder. What got put in there was the unethical part or unwise part of this decision, and I also have sections that deal with unethical and possibly illegal. So aside from that, thumbs up for a good decision. So, which doesn't leave anything left, of course. The unwise part is that you'd be buying property, as Jim said, for a bridge that probably will never be built in maybe 10 years, people have said in the written comments. So the city owns property. It's kind of like saying I want to build a house, but I'm going to buy a lot that isn't legal to build on now, and I don't have any money for it, but I'm going to buy it just because I hope someday I'll be able to be there. That's the unwise part. The unethical part, as Jim mentioned, is that the city made a commitment to the voters that the purchases would not be made until federal approvals for the bridge were in hand, and you addressed that question. So I'll use my remaining time on the possibly illegal, and that came from somebody much more knowledgeable than I about this, who, as I said in my message to you, I won't mention their name because I don't have permission to use it, but I can just tell from their comments, as I'm sure you could, that these are people that know about state and federal rules in this area. I noticed in the staff report the addition that these concerns aren't addressed, which makes me think that you guys also know that you are treading on some kind of shaky ground here. Because the point is that the federal government, there's a 2007 memo, has pretty strict rules about acquiring property for a right-of-way before all the approvals are in. It can be done, but if it conflicts with the National Environmental Protection Act, the Environmental Impact Statement, then that can't happen. So I'll just read some of what he said. His takeaways, which I'll read first, are at a minimum, the city should be consulting with its partners, including both the Federal Highway Administration and ODOT, to make sure whatever acquisition they might do reflects a full understanding of relevant federal requirements. And I don't see that in any of your materials, that you have gotten permission from the federal authorities to do the acquisition. And also, federal regs get at the key point to be made. Early acquisition may not go forward if it prejudices National Environmental Policy Act decisions about need and alternatives. That's coming in the environmental impact statement. The wisest course is to postpone acquisition until NEPA and land use decisions authorizing the project are in place. If the city proceeds, this expert says, it will need to explain how its acquisition is consistent with NEPA. So if you're going to have to do that after the point is that you may not get federal reimbursement for the acquisitions, and in fact, in the worst case scenario, it could interfere with the entire approval of the
I'm
third
sorry,
bridge.
your time is up. Can you wrap up real quickly?
Oh, yes, I
Okay,
guess,
thank
because
you.
I might have not made that fast point clearly. It goes so far as to say that it could jeopardize the entire Salem River crossing because you've made an acquisition that interferes with your ability to fairly conduct an environmental impact statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? All right, thank you so much. Ms. Rimmer, welcome.
Hi. Greetings, Madam Mayor and council members, and thank you for letting us talk. I'm Pam Rimmer. I live at 156 Front Street.
You'll need to speak right up into it. It's
Okay.
not a real technical microphone. We apologize.
Okay, that's fine. I'm Pam Rimmer. I live at 156 Front Street, condo 860, and I'm here to talk in support of quieting the train whistle. Another person that lives at the same building is Dr. Alan Mayer, who's an audiologist in town. He owns Pacific Audiology Center. He's in New York right now, could not be here, but wrote a letter, which I made copies, but not quite enough, but I'll leave here with you.
Okay, good.
But he's essentially saying the newest research is showing that hearing loss in older people, me included, is not just because we're getting older, but it's the accumulation of environmental sounds. And it doesn't have to be guns and bombs and loud things, which we have grown accustomed to believing. It's all environmental sounds. And that accumulation is what's killing off our hearing cells. And he says, and which again I'll leave with you, and I'll better read it up here so I talk in a microphone. He said, we start out with 60,000 cilia in our ear, and as we expose them to more and more noise, they finally stop functioning and hearing loss results. Every sound we are exposed to contributes to the situation. We need to be respectful of what sounds we want to expose our ears to. Every time that train whistle blows, we are using up some of our allotted hearing. If that can be avoided, it would certainly be helpful. Thank you, Dr. Alan Mayer. Anyway, there's a full letter, which I'll leave with somebody here. I don't need to lose any more hearing if I can avoid it. But so I agree with him. But I also look at the crossing on 12th Street that's got a quiet zone. There's a lot more traffic. The trains go faster. And our trains go slow. They rumble like crazy. The gates go down. The bells go off. And even though one doesn't have a gate, it has lights. And they're not that far apart. There is a lot of noise and rumbles and vibrations to go with those trains without the whistles. You add the whistles and it's just crazy. But nobody could avoid those trains. They're so loud and they're slow. And they go throughout the night. Some of the engineers are nice and they have to do it 3 times with every street along the way. And others, like last night, just lay on it, and you wake up in the night, you know the train's going to come, but it lifts you off your bed. It is so loud. And it seems it goes on forever because they lay on it, and the next intersection, they just lay on it until the next intersection. So I think it's their way of getting even or something. They have to work at night. But if there's any way of silencing it, I do believe there's enough noise, vibrations, lights, bells, everything to get people's attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Are there questions from counselors? All right. Appreciate you coming down tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mark Wigg, followed by Robert Connaught. I probably didn't say that right. Courtright, thank you. If I put my glasses on, It really helps when I'm reading this list. We can distribute those for you, Mark.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have enough for even some of the people in the audience if they want.
Okay. Well, if you just give them to staff, I think we can get those squared around for you. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Mark Wigg. I live at 1950 Saginaw Street South, and I must disclose that I got this T-shirt from a Public Works employee.
Okay.
Okay. So, a few months ago, I sent a video to the mayor and councilors and staff proposing that they acquire the right-of-way so we can create a multi-use trail from Salem town into downtown. Now, I know the mayor walks a lot on our beautiful pathways, and I know a lot of the councilors do too, and they enjoy. We have a wonderful system of pathways thanks to Public Works that created them and maintained them. And so I sent this video to the council and saying, hey, here's an opportunity to create beauty and spread joy. And I think you might be interested in it. So the mayor and council looked at it, and from what I saw from the testimony, it kind of, hey, here's an opportunity to create beauty and spread joy, and possibly even reduce traffic on Wallace Road. So they gave this to Public Works, and they said, please evaluate this proposal. And the request for creating beauty and spreading joy resulted in the document you have tonight, the staff report. And I'd just like to give a little interpretation of that staff report. No. Crush your hopes and dreams for creating beauty and spreading joy. Blame it on the UGB and take on the role of an ogre that demolishes homes and businesses needlessly. I was shocked. And the staff report said the city could not proceed because of that UGB issue. But what really shocked me is they didn't include what's on your report there, that the Salem River crossing says the UGB issue is going away in a few months because we'll have all the permits. And so if you knew that the UGB issue wasn't the issue, then we could proceed with creating beauty, spreading joy, and reducing congestion on Wallace Road. And so I'm here tonight to ask the mayor and council to give clear direction to Public Works that they want to create beauty and spread joy. And they would like to see that trail in this year, and it's possible.
And your time is up, Mark. I'm sorry, it's the red light time. Okay. Can you sum up?
Yeah, I'm close enough.
Okay, excellent. Are there questions for Mr. Wigg? Yes, Councillor Lewis.
You know, I gotta question the comment about relieving congestion on Wallace Boulevard. Because in your proposal, the only congestion that would be relieved would be those people that were either walking or riding a bicycle on Wallace Boulevard. My perception of the congestion on Wallace Boulevard is not too many bicyclists, not too many pedestrians, but there is a lot of congestion. So I don't see the true benefit of the relief of congestion in your plan.
If I can address that, there's a picture down in the lower right of Wallace Road, 7:52 a.m. this morning. And you see that long line of cars there? And then on the other side, you see 60 people that went from car to bike, and you see those long line of cars on that other side. All of these cars that you see in this picture from ODOT, that's less than 60 people. If we can create beauty and spread joy and build that trail, we will get more than 60 people. So all those cars you see in that photo, they're no longer in the car, because you will be able to go from Salem town to downtown faster on a bike than you can in a car, and it'll be safer and more fun.
Okay. Currently, you can park in Wallace Marine Park and walk or ride across the pedestrian bridge to go downtown. We've communicated about that. I do it every day. There's one car that consistently parks there, one car. That is already there. So why aren't people using it?
I called Parks and the parking people that control that, and they said if you park in that parking lot, that gravel parking lot, and walk over as a commute parking lot, you will get ticketed.
No, I disagree. I've
Well,
heard that they will not get a ticket.
We can check that out. But,
Mark, my point
anyway,
is,
yes.
my point is, I don't think your perception of people is connected with reality. I don't think that if that pathway was there, that they would flock to it and use it. I don't agree. I don't agree.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? All right, thank you. Thank you for coming down. Appreciate your testimony. All right, Robert Courtwright. And I don't see anyone else signed up, so if someone else did want to testify during this session of public testimony, just let us know and we'll put your name on the list. Mr. Courtwright, thanks for coming down.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name's Bob Courtwright. I live at 373 Suncrest Avenue Northwest in West Salem, and I'm here to talk about item 3.3C. I don't want to repeat any of the points that you heard from Mr. Shepke and others, other than to suggest that purchase of right-of-way at this point for a third bridge crossing is really premature. It's premature because purchase of right-of-way is really an implementation decision. It's a decision to carry out an adopted plan. And that's typically the way that you do right-of-way acquisition. You have an adopted plan and you're carrying it out. For the third river crossing, you don't yet have decisions in place, adopted plans that authorize the transportation facility that you're proposing. And there are two processes that I think you need to think about that affect this. One is the federal environmental process. And as been mentioned, federal regulations limit the advanced purchase of right-of-way, that is, purchase of right-of-way before an EIS is completed. And the reason's obvious. You don't want to prejudge or predetermine the outcome. You want the process to determine the outcome. So there's a limitation on that. And that's something that I think that you need to address, and you need to consult with the Federal Highway Administration. And the reason is that if you do acquire the right-of-way in advance, you could be jeopardizing that approval by the Federal Highway Administration, and also the city's ability to get reimbursed or consider the cost of right-of-way as part of the cost of the project. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is the land use approval process. Something that I know a little bit about is there is yet to be an approved land use or a plan amendment or a UGB amendment or goal exceptions to authorize this project. Until those are in place, you don't really have an approved project that you can implement. I would say that your decision to acquire property in advance of the decision is, or a land use decision, is really making a land use decision. At a minimum, you should be clarifying exactly what your intent is in relation to the land use requirements. And I think, as others have suggested, you're better off waiting until you have a land use approval in place before you implement it.
All right, thank you. Are there questions? Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Cartwright. You said you have a little knowledge of land use. What is that knowledge you have of land use?
I recently retired from more than 30 years with the Department of Land Conservation and Development. I was the lead staff on transportation and land use planning for the department.
So I would say that's more than a little. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, other comments? Questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming down. Sir, welcome. Your name and your ward or address, please.
Dennis Miller, 4742 Liberty Road South, here in Salem. I've attended 3 council meetings, the 3 latest ones, and at each one of them, it's kind of disappointing that pedestrians basically fear to walk the streets to make crossings. We've heard about, unfortunately, deadly consequences. Tonight, we've talked about another pedestrian that was struck. And I know as a motorist, I'm not really predisposed to yield right of way. And that's for 2 reasons. The first one is many times I'll stop, I'll slow down, and they simply wave me on because they're not ready to cross. The second reason is, well, what happened when I stopped at Commercial and Bush Street one day. I drive a van, I was in the left-hand lane, and I proceeded to take and stop for a pedestrian. She started to cross. I noticed that in my side mirror, the motorist coming up beside me was not going to stop, unaware of what was happening. Well, when I honked the horn, she kind of glared at me, but then she kind of gave that look of, well, thank you, because she would have been possibly another statistic. So what I would like to do is propose that the City of Salem adopt what I would like to call arm out to step out. And basically what this entails is that a motorist, a bicyclist, they need to take and signal their intentions to the others that they're going to be turning left, stopping, etc. And so what I'd like to see the city do is to kind of take and do an educational program which basically says if a pedestrian puts his arm out to signal that they need to yield right-of-way. And part of that, too, is that as the motorist comes to a slow or comes to a stop, that they implement the use of their hazard flashers. This is, again, communications. You're letting know both motorists coming to and from that you're stopping to let a pedestrian by. I think it can be utilized a public education campaign, working with the Statesman Journal, local radio stations, and neighborhood associations. Now, I know I drive through 3 school zones to get to work every day. And I know that the reason that everybody slows down to 20 is because of their law-abiding citizens. Well, or maybe fear. They're afraid that that motorcycle cop's hiding behind the bushes, a sign, or another vehicle. And part of this campaign would be to take and have, unfortunately, the police do something very similar, to take and employ pedestrians and say within a 6-month period to hand out warnings to those that don't yield right-of-way to pedestrians that are trying to cross the street.
I'm sorry, your time is up. Can you wrap up?
I can. It actually works. Today, I walked down to Rubitz and Liberty Road to cross, and normally nobody gives me right-of-way. I put out my arm. They actually slowed down and let me cross. So something I'd like to seriously have the city look into implementing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? It looks like, I don't know which of you was first, Councillor Bennett and then Councillor Anderson.
Well, mine is just a thank you for this. I use this this strategy quite a bit. I cross on Court Street in front of the Capitol quite a bit. We have flashing lights on a couple of them, but on others we don't. And on a street like Court, which much like Commercial and others where you've got a kind of major commuter traffic, it really is helpful for motorists to know you're actually interested in crossing. And I think it's actually recommended in at least some publications I've seen. So this is really a helpful idea. Thank you. I hope we take a close look at it.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. A comment or two and also then a question. I think this is terrific, too. I will tell you that as an avid bicycler, I signal my intentions anytime I'm doing anything for this precise reason. Both arms, either way, and even if I'm crossing I'm on one side of a 3-lane street and I want to go into the middle lane for some reason, I go to the middle lane and then I put my my hand down like this to let the drivers know that's where I'm going to be. So I think this is very good. My question is this something you came up with, Mr. Miller, or is this a national thing, or where did you get it?
Went to the internet about 4 o'clock this afternoon, downloaded
well, good for you.
Image of a sign and drew the arm on. So it's not real professional, but I think the key is that if the city, it sounds like there's zones in Salem which have, well, that have high incidence between pedestrians. So the cost of, say, some signage like that would be very inexpensive compared to the cost to families.
Just one more follow-up, Mayor.
Certainly.
Thank you. You know, I think this also dovetails in nicely with the Vision Zero project that we were talking about, or I was talking about a couple weeks ago at a meeting after we got that very good report from Public Works and the Police Department issuing, you know, letting people know why these accidents happen and what we've done so far, but we can do more, and this is a good idea, and I think we ought to continue moving forward to Vision Zero or something like that, and this is maybe one way we can do it. And thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
Great. Councillor Dickey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'll just thank you also for bringing this down. I think this is sounds like a really interesting way to one way to address some of our issues. I know after we had our meeting a couple weeks ago and the police gave their report, one of the things I don't know about anybody else, but I was surprised to know. I try to watch if people are going to cross the street, and I'll try to stop for them. But I didn't realize that really the law said you had to step out off of the curb. And that's very concerning because we have places where we don't have bike lanes, so it's not like you're stepping out into a bike lane. You just have to basically step out into traffic and then the cars will stop. So something like this would be probably welcome. I mean, I think for a lot of people who don't want to have to step out into traffic and hope that the cars stop, but I think this would be one way to address that. So thanks for bringing it to our attention.
All right. Councillor Benjamin.
Thank you so much for bringing this to attention. This is a really nice idea. Arm out to step out, very catchy. The police department and other entities have been trying to get the word out for pedestrians and motorists to kind of come to some sort of consensus of watching out for each other. I see this as just the way it is right now, being blasted out there through these organizations, being a really good tool to start the conversation. Maybe not signs, but perhaps stickers on each of the crossing poles might be a good start as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Councillor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks for coming down as well. And we've encouraged this kind of behavior as well already for downtown. There's a lot of zero visibility to where when alleys are coming out or parking garages or exits, to basically have your hand out in front of you, which gives a driver that much longer to actually see you if you're crossing out in front of them. But
now, a good question for you. On my internet search, I came across signage which can be basically, it looks like it's very vertical in size, okay? And it basically says, it's got red with yellow, it says yield the right of way to pedestrians or something like that. Is that something that the city of Salem has looked into?
And I don't know, the gentleman sitting right to your left would have probably the most knowledge on that. But, you know, all the crossings downtown as well as other areas in town could utilize similar signage based on the best way to protect them in a couple of different situations, not only when you're going to cross the road, but again, to increase your visibility. That way the public's like, yeah, I'm supposed to stick my arm out for this and this and this and this, you know? So it feeds in well with practices that are already recommended.
Excellent.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Just one brief comment. I think our new city manager might also be able to talk about that, because when I was there in Ann Arbor checking your references, there were signs that said something like that. You know, vehicles must yield to pedestrians. They're right up there on the side of the street, and they yielded to me when I walked across the street anyway.
Well, we certainly appreciate you coming down and appreciate you giving us this great idea.
Okay.
When I was in Seattle, I noticed a restaurant that we often go to with our daughter and son-in-law, and it's on a busy street, and on the poles on each side of the street are little buckets with little flags. And so you pick up the flag, you hold the flag up and walk across the street, and then you put the flag in the bucket on the other side of the street. And we didn't get hit, so I'm, still alive, so it worked that day, and maybe that would work. But I wanted to say thank you to you for something that you said that I just absolutely appreciate so much. You said maybe the city and people from the community could do a campaign together.
Correct.
And I think that's what it's going to take. So thank you for mentioning that as well. Government can't do everything alone, and it really takes the entire community to bring about, I think, the realization that we need to work together to be safer. So thanks for saying that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Was there anyone else here who wanted to testify during public testimony? Okay, we'll take a moment to adjust and let people leave who have other things to go on to, and then we will get back to the agenda on the consent calendar. We'll get back to this evening's business. All right, I'm calling back to order this evening's meeting of the Salem City Council for February 8th, 2016. And we are now at item number 3, the consent calendar.
Okay, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
See if I can get it right this time.
Councilor McCoy, I have
I've been
every faith
practicing
in you.
here for half an hour, so
All
we'll
right.
see if I can come through.
We're ready for a motion.
I move the consent calendar with the following polls: 3.2A by Councilor Lewis, and 3.3B and 3.3C by Councilor Bennett.
Second.
All right, thank you. It's been moved by Councilor by
Want me to go through
Councilor
the rest?
McCoy, I'm sorry, by Councilor McCoy and seconded by Councilor Benars to move the staff recommendation with the exception of the poll of 3.2A by Councilor Lewis and 3.3B and C by Councilor Bennett. And Councilor McCoy, do you have a summary for us about
Sure.
the consent calendar?
We review the rest of the consent calendar here, and we've got under resolutions, we have a resolution that would adopt the new council policy number C7, which is an investment policy and portfolio guidelines. It's basically, it's taking some things out, a list of the approved brokers, and adding some required state language required by state statute.
Just make more money.
And we're renewing off-street permit fees. It's a $3 daily fee for part-time employees downtown and seasonal employees. We have a resolution that would allow retention of only digital images as original records. So retention of all public records will be in digital format, and this is okay, but it's got to be approved by the City Council. Under action items, we have a Food for Fines Week that we're going to approve, which is basically April 3rd, the week of Sunday, April 3rd through Sunday, April 10th. And that would be at the Central and West Salem branches of the library. And if you've got a fine that's on file there and you can bring in food that gets contributed to the Marion County Food Share Food Drive to get rid of that fine on the records. And it's been up for a number of years now and very successful. And then finally, we've got another action item asking the council to ratify the legislative positions priorities approved by the council's legislative committee for those proposed pieces of legislation that the state legislature is looking at here during their February session.
All right, you've heard the review of the consent calendar. It was perfectly done. Good job. All those in favor? Excuse me, Councilor Anderson,
Sorry, Madam
you
Mayor.
have a question.
I just have one question about the retention of records, and I don't know whether, my question is not, it's all a terrific idea. I just wonder, will that make it easier when people come in and want public records and request public records? That means we won't have to go through and look for a paper search. We could just look at it, and it might be quicker and less staff time?
That's correct.
Okay, good. That's a good thing.
All right. The motion on the floor, all those in favor of adopting the consent calendar as described, signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we will move on to public hearings, and 4.A, I believe that Councillor Bednarz may have a motion on that.
I don't. Am I supposed to?
All right.
This is just
okay.
adoption of the order, so if you just move to adopt the order.
Okay, I move to adopt the, sorry. I move to adopt the order.
And is there a second? Second. It's been moved by Councillor Bednarz and seconded by Councillor McCoy to adopt the order for the appeal of hearings officer decision denying the quasi-judicial zone change conditional use permit. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And item 4B is a public hearing, and would our city recorder please introduce that?
Madam Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say something?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Before we go to public hearing, I'd like to make a motion on this. Madam Mayor, I move we continue this hearing until February 22nd meeting.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councillor Bennett and seconded by Councillor Bednarz to move this, to continue this public hearing to February 22nd. Is there discussion?
Continue if you didn't open it.
Is there
That's good.
explanation
I can provide
or
that.
direction?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I think probably
Yes.
what we're doing is, I used the term continuance because I saw it here on this sheet, but
I
I
did
think
too.
we're probably postponing it, really, postponing the public hearing. I apologize for using the wrong term, but this is at the request of the applicant. And they
okay.
would like to have a little more time to perfect their testimony, I believe.
That's correct. They contacted us late today and asked that the hearing be continued to the February 22nd date, and they'll be providing additional supplemental written information.
So we can open and continue or just postpone?
Okay, so is it a continuance?
It's a
or
continuance.
It is
It's
a
a
continuance,
continuance.
all right. So it's been moved and seconded that we continue this to February 22nd. Is there any further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries with one nay, and that's Councillor Anderson. Thank you. We will go to special orders of business, which means we flip back to the consent calendar, and we will go to item 3.2A, which was pulled by Councillor Lewis. Councillor Lewis, do you have a motion?
Yeah, I do. I have, I'll move staff recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Councillor Lewis and seconded by Councillor Benjamin to move the staff recommendation. Is there discussion?
Just, I had one question, really, and that was on page 6 of the staff report. It mentions that once the housing need analysis is adopted, staff will explore the recommendation to create different development standards for existing homes in older neighborhoods. And I'm just curious why we're not looking at that in conjunction with everything else to increase the multifamily. And my example is what you see in some of the older neighborhoods in larger cities where the large homes are turned into multifamily. And my sense is when we went through this discussion that was something that the group felt Salem was ready for. And it's looking like now that won't be looked at until after we've met the requirement for multifamily. And so I'm just curious why we're not.
Okay. Glenn Gross, I'm the Community Development Director, and I'll give you my version of the answer to that, and then I'd like the Planning Administrator to come up here just to make sure that I get it right. The reason we're saying that we would follow up the housing need analysis with this type of a code amendment is this isn't aimed at increasing multifamily in established neighborhoods. This code amendment would be aimed at allowing existing single-family homes to renovate, to make additions and so forth, and not have to meet the rigorous standards that we have in place today, but have an alternative set of standards for established development. So the planning administrator?
Hi, Lisa Anderson Ogilvie. I can provide some clarity. So actually, phase one will do what you're talking about by exploring allowing existing single-family homes to convert, perhaps, just keep the house and convert it. What we're talking about really at the end of the report is setbacks, lot coverage, how close you can have your porch, just for houses in older neighborhoods. So it's not related to whether or not they're used for multifamily. It's just about allowing people to redevelop. It was a recommendation in the NIN-Cessna plan and the H&A, but it doesn't get at the multifamily deficit, so we weren't going to focus on that. But phase one of the work plan will focus on the accessory dwelling units and the allowing multifamily in some single-family neighborhoods.
All right, thank you.
Let's see, Councilor Benjamin?
I heard you mention the accessory dwellings. How soon is that going to come up?
That is in phase one. That's the first project we're going to tackle.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize. Councilor McCoy also has a question.
We're laughing over here. My question is on the timeline. Why does it take 18 to 21 months to do phase one? I mean, I can understand you have outreach, and then you have to, whatever you come out with the outreach, you go through the process. But how does that get to almost 2 years?
Well, so the concepts, accessory dwelling units, one can be developed in many, many ways. But concept number 2, allow multifamily housing types and single family, can mean a lot of things. And the recommendation in the H&A didn't get more specific than that. So it could mean, are we looking at more duplexes? Are we looking at triplexes? Are we looking at allowing people to divide a current house? Are we looking at only certain neighborhoods? Are we looking at certain lot sizes? So we would plan to do a lot of outreach on how other communities do this, and then, or research on how other communities do it. A lot of outreach, because it really could have an impact on existing neighborhoods, develop the code language. And then also, we only have 2 long-range planners that in the planning division, and they're working on many other projects as well. So this is one project that's gonna, it's gonna be a main focus, but we have other projects that are funded that they're working on currently.
So that raises its head, and I understand that for sure. My final question is, we've got to do something, right? Is there a timeline from the state when you talk about our deficit and when we have to address it, or if we're working on it, we're okay? But
the study looked at a 20-year horizon, so from 2015 to 2035. So we have to address it within the 20 years. Because at some point, at the end of the 20 years, you have to start over with your projections and your population estimate. We hope to not take 20 years to do it, of course, which is why our work plan right now is 4 to 5 years.
Yeah. And if I could, just one other thing to point out is what the planning staff is pursuing, I think, is a really smart approach to this. Last time, back in the 90s, there was just this immediate go out and, the city forcefully rezoned property all over to multifamily. I wasn't here, but I understand it was very controversial, took a long time, wasn't a popular thing. What the planning staff is doing is a systematic approach to first see if we can work with the private market, the private sector, put some zoning code changes into place and so forth, and incentivize the market to do a lot of this. And we've also had conversations with the state, and they have tentatively agreed to give us credit for the changes to code that we can get passed towards the deficit and reduce the deficit down further, so that eventually when we get to that point where we have to rezone land to multifamily, we're hopeful that the amount we have to rezone will be less than what it looks like today. So this is a lengthier process, but we think hopefully it'll be a smoother process.
Well, I'd like to note that as the Homeless Initiative Task Force begins its work, one of the things we're going to be doing is looking at different types of housing. And we may certainly be bringing forward some suggestions about alternate types of housing. We've talked about the mother-in-law unit, we've talked about smaller houses, and I think that the task force is going to be looking at a range of those as well. And I would hope that if we can bring forward some ideas, and particularly some public-private partnerships, that we might be able to move ahead with some of those plans and some of those decisions. Good. All right. Councillor Nanki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, and I'm definitely in support of the timeline that we had put out. Question comes in is, in phase 1, it sounded like we were talking about a couple of different, is it possible to make a phase 1A and phase 1B for stuff that we just know is pretty standard across the spectrum, to kind of speed up for some people that may want to do something rather than take 2 years?
Yeah, I believe we would do the accessory dwelling units a little bit ahead of the other because it's much smaller in scope, and there's a wide body of research of how other cities have implemented it. So then it would just be more about outreach to figure out how best it would work in Salem.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions regarding item 3.2A? All right, then the motion on the floor is to adopt the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll move to 3.3B. And Councillor Bennett, I believe you have a motion regarding that item?
I do, Madam Mayor. I move the council direct staff to initiate establishment of a railroad quiet zone along the Portland and Western Railroad at the River Road South, Minto Island Road South, and State Street Railroad crossings.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Bennett and seconded by Councillor Bednarz. Councillor Bennett, do you have discussion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I want to, not as part of the motion, but I think as, I hope, real clear understanding with staff, we've talked about this in advance, but that we are not suggesting that particularly the northern terminus of this be somehow confined to the Court Street crossing, which is what really this means with State Street, but we can include Court Street, but that to the extent that the Federal Railroad Administration, the state, the railroad would agree that we go as far north as we can. I know there are going to be some barriers once we start asking, but if that's possible, I think it's the addition of another sign or two is going to be of such minimal cost. Is that reasonable, Mr. Fernandez?
Yes, Peter Fernandez, Public Works Director. What we attempted to do with our preliminary analysis is to determine how much of this railroad inside of the city limits is eligible for a quiet zone using the rule rather than supplemental safety features. And what we came up with was what you see in our recommendation. And then I sent council the email later that we discovered that we perhaps have some issues out at South River Road. So we don't believe, in our conversations with Federal Railroad Administration, we don't believe that Court Street is in the quiet zone because as a pedestrian crossing, they don't sound the horn there. We don't believe Union Street qualifies. We know everything to the north doesn't qualify. But we can certainly, asking doesn't cost any money because, and if they change their minds or they say, no, you can do, it's not the cost of the signs, it's actually just following the rules.
Right.
I would suggest to council that you go ahead and amend the motion and include Union Street and leave River Road so that we have clear policy direction to go for it.
Okay.
So if something happens, if something changes, we have this piece of paper that we can go forward with, and we're certainly willing to try. It's just, we don't think we're going to get it, but we could certainly ask.
Well, if there is an objection from you, Madam Mayor, or my
Right.
second, I'd like to then include Union Street in the motion. Okay, great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And then with, just final in discussion, I really want to thank Mr. Hatch from the Rivers for working with us and with Peter Fernandez and especially Tony Martin, who've done really a great amount of work on this. I know it, because having dealt with this issue on 12th Street, along the UP, which is a very different process, but this is just really appreciated. This, I think, as the folks testified who live in the downtown area, this makes a real difference in the livability. And with the past couple nights with windows open, you can really, we've still got, as you know, horns sounding up in the Market Street area that still plague that northeast neighborhood. I assume we're going to be done with that this summer. But this has been really good that you guys have worked so hard on this. Really appreciate it very much.
Great. I just want to clarify, the Union Street, when you talk about that, is that the crossing just to the north of Union and the Union Street Railroad Bridge where the train comes out onto the street?
No. It is the one right at the Union Street Railroad Bridge, which is fully protected. It's north of there that it's out onto the street.
To Riverfront Park.
Okay.
It's the north entrance to Riverfront Park.
Right, but at that point, the train is going under, isn't it?
It's going under the bridges.
Under the bridges.
It emerges from under the bridges,
Right.
and there is one last intersection right there, which is really the entrance to the north parking lot of Riverfront Park. And then it's north of there.
Oh, I know where you mean, thank you.
Right, it's
Okay.
north of
I'd
there
forgotten part.
that
Right.
we're then into the middle of the
Okay,
street.
Right, but where it comes out into the street, there is a crossing.
Yes,
at
and
the
it's
street,
protected.
And that is protected.
Right. The
Okay.
issue becomes, very simply, without getting to it, because it's a very complicated rule. The issue is because there's no protection to the north. That's what creates the issue with being able to declare a quiet zone on Union Street. It's the same issue that we ran into at Woodrow and Sunnyview, et cetera. So we're familiar with that part of the rule, but there's nothing ventured, nothing gained. So we can certainly formally make the request.
Have we, just a second, have we ever had any communication from people who live at the apartment complex that is along the river, but north of Union Street, and I can't remember what it's called, but you know where I mean?
I do know what you're talking about. We have not. Frankly, the only communication we've had recently was from Mr. Hatch, who really pursued this issue.
Okay.
But when we started visiting with some folks, you saw them here, and then the owners of the South Block were all very excited.
Right,
and,
right.
And then we also pursued we're going to pursue the Minto Island Park entrance, which of course will benefit all the folks that live up the hill who over the years have complained about the railroad blowing at that location.
Right. Okay, thank you. Now let's see, I see hands. Councilor Anderson and then Councilor Bednarz.
I'm all in favor of this, and I want to add a little comment about the Union Street, and I don't know that anything can be done, but that's where we got all the money, the grant to make the bike path and to improve the intersections of Union and Commercial and Union and Liberty. I don't know if this ties in at all or could tie in at all, but I guess I'm asking you, does it tie in? Is there something that could be done?
Yeah, no, it's not about, in this case, it's not about money. It's all about the rule, because there's really not a whole lot that we can do north of Division, where the railroad is right down the middle of the street, and there's no way to fix that to the point where the rule would allow us to create a quiet zone.
Well, I guess I understand that because it's right down the middle of the street. And the first time I ever drove down that late at night with my wife, and she was wondering what is going on here because there's a train train right beside us. I was just curious as to that crossing there where I don't know what it is that goes by the. The guy who invented the erector said Gilbert's the Gilbert House, and then that's where the intersection is, where that turns in.
That's Union Street.
Okay.
That's
and so there's nothing that can really be done there to make it more bike-ped friendly than it already is.
No. That's as safe as.
Yeah.
In fact, when you introduce a quiet zone, you're actually making it less safe. That's why the city's invested $4 million on the Union Pacific Railroad to address the safety issues.
Councilor Bednarz.
I had a couple questions. First, I know we've had this discussion why I think it's Minto Brown Road cannot have a quiet zone because it doesn't have the crossbars that come down.
Brown Island Road.
Brown Island Road.
Brown
Thank you.
Island Road.
But what about the next one on River Road South? as you're going past Roberts.
Right. So because Brown Island doesn't have protection and the trains speed up at that location, River Road doesn't qualify unless we protect Brown Island. And that's how we get into a $500,000 issue.
Okay.
So someday, if we have $500,000
Yeah, right.
to install the gates and the lights at Brown Island, then River Road would qualify.
Okay, and the other one I had a question was, I understand why Front Street going north of Division all the way through there, but what's the logic by not having it at places like, Shipping and so forth, as it goes through the neighborhoods further up to the north and crosses across Pine Street? And I mean,
Right,
that's
so-
even thicker into neighbor people's homes.
And we recognize that because there's that big run on Front Street where the train has to blow its whistle, that then creates, in simple terms, creates a domino effect where nothing to the north qualifies. It's the issue that we got ourselves into at Woodrow.
So is there a way to talk to whoever made the rule?
Well,
No,
that
dear
would
God.
be that. As I'm fond of saying, I hate to make a federal case out of it, but that's what we're talking about.
They're God with a lower G, so, okay, thank you.
All right, the motion is on the floor to adopt the recommendation with the addition of the Union Street. All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Hatch. Yes. Nice to see you this evening. All right, our next item is 3.3C, and that is, I believe, Councillor Bennett, you have a motion?
I do, Madam Mayor.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yes, Councillor Bednarz.
Thank you. I, out of an abundance of caution, I want to declare a potential conflict of interest for the properties that may be acquired on the east side of the Willamette River, as I have ownership and properties in that neighborhood. I want to recuse myself from any discussion on matters concerning the Marion County properties. I own nothing on the west side of the Willamette River and have no potential conflict of interest. So if it stays to the west side, I'll be in it. Otherwise, I'll be out of at least the east side.
Okay.
Well, good,
All
you're
right,
in luck
thank you.
tonight.
All right, Councillor Bennett, or was it, is
Yeah.
it Councillor Lewis? Councillor Bennett, okay.
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council authorize using Streets and Bridges General Obligation Bond Funds for right-of-way acquisition and construction of Marine Drive Northwest, south of the urban growth boundary near Cameo Drive Northwest.
Second.
It's been moved by Councillor Bennett and seconded by Councillor Dickey to authorize using Streets and Bridges General Obligation Bond Funds for the right-of-way acquisition and construction of Marine Drive Northwest, south of the urban growth boundary near Cameo Drive Northwest, period. Is there discussion?
Yes,
Councillor Bennett.
yes,
and then
Madam Mayor.
Councillor Lewis.
I just, joining, I think, the comments of Councillor Bernard's in a real bow to caution. I think we ought to stay, in this case, on the west side of the river, and also that we not try to go into the urban growth boundary areas where we have potential right-of-way that is not inside the urban growth boundary until that is resolved on the west side. And this motion, I think, does that.
All right, Councillor Lewis, followed by Councillor Dickey.
Yeah, I actually have questions of staff. I'm hoping that's appropriate for now.
Yes, actually, we can certainly stop right now and have a presentation by staff.
Well, I have questions.
You just have a question? Okay.
Actually, it's several questions. The first one, if I get to my notes, please. If I understand the recommendation, there's a recommendation to use the Streets and Bridges bond funds to purchase right-of-way and construct Marine Drive from the urban growth boundary south all the way to the connection of 2nd Street. So this is part of the West Salem business plan, Marine Drive also. Is that right?
That is correct, Councilor Lewis.
Okay. At the time the Streets and Bridges bond measure was passed, was Marine Drive even contemplated south of Glen Creek Boulevard?
Yes, it has I think we have an attachment that shows Marine Drive. It doesn't quite show it too well in the figure that we provided you. Marine Drive comes down to about Veal, and then just sort of ends there. When that alignment was adopted by council 18 years ago, as Mr. Easterly commented on, council and staff, frankly, didn't have a good sense of where to end Marine Drive. There was a lot of discussion about would it connect to Wallace Road or would it connect to Veal and Moyer. But we couldn't quite figure out what to do with it, so it ended basically at Veal and Moyer, waiting for something to happen. And actually, the West Salem business plan gave us that opportunity. That now there's a reason for Marine Drive to exist south of Glen Creek.
Okay. Next question I have is the proposal looks like it's to purchase a right-of-way and construct Marine Drive from Glen Creek north to, and I'm going to say Cameo Street. As a practical matter, if we were to do that, looking at the maps that I've seen, it looks like Cameo Street extends and then goes into the apartment complex, and so you could actually continue and go to Wallace Boulevard, but you'd have to go through the apartment complex parking lot. Is that correct?
I'm not certain how you get to Wallace Road, Counselor.
Well, if the map I was looking at is correct, there's looks like there's it's not a street, but it's a parking lot. Cameo Street ends at the apartment complex.
Correct. Correct.
And that parking lot connects to Cameo Street.
Right.
That parking lot connects to Wallace Boulevard.
Okay, I guess. A westerly extension of Cameo is what you're
Correct.
talking about.
Yeah.
I suppose so. That's never really, that has never been on any of our plans or any of our discussions.
Yeah, I don't see it in the
Yeah.
street plans, but
No.
I see it as a practical matter on the map. My question, I guess, is if this street if Marine Drive is improved, will people use it and go through that parking lot to find alleviation from Wallace Boulevard?
I don't believe so. That's not to say that somebody might not do that. If this motion passes this evening, what we would want to do is then work in conjunction with Urban Development Department to see if we can find funding for Second Street so that we can create more of a system, so that it's Marine Drive from Cameo coming south across Glen Creek and then going around underneath Wallace and connecting to something, so that there's a complete system doing what the plan, what the West Salem plan intends it to do. And then don't forget, this is just a phase one. There is then the plan to take it all the way to regardless of the bridge, to have it go all the way up to Riverbend Road and have Second connected all the way out to the Safeway. I always forget the name of the street over there. So that we have a complete, we really have a complete collector that goes from the Safeway to Riverbend Road.
Okay. And my last question is, we've seen tentative prices of the Second Street extension, and then it's about $7 million, and then the Marine Drive, which is very loosely at $5 million, and I know that's not refined yet. And the purchase and construction of Marine Drive from Glen Creek to Cameo would be about $2.5 million. So if we're adding that Marine Drive extension from Glen Creek to Cameo to the West Salem business plan expense, you're looking at maybe $14-15 million, and you have $3.5 million to get started with.
Right.
So what do you do first? What's the intention of?
Well, what we would like to do is before we proceed with Marine Drive, is see what we can do with Second Street. So see, we're entering a kind of a pre-design phase with Second Street to better understand how that underpass is going to work, understand how there's some complications as we come around the corner right at the Union Street Railroad Bridge. Right. So we want to see how that works, how the connections to Musgrave work, and see what we're talking about cost-wise, and see if we can identify, once we have that understanding, we'll have a better sense of what those costs are, and can we identify funding for that. If we can identify funding, then we can add it to the 3.6 and build a complete system. If Second Street doesn't move, if it turns out to be too expensive, we can't find the money for Second Street, then we would, with this direction, we would proceed to go ahead and build Marine Drive, certainly to Glen Creek, if not south, if we can connect it to something, so that that's in place. There are some properties that need to be acquired along this line, so we can certainly start doing those acquisitions, and we could proceed with construction. I just wouldn't want to proceed with construction not knowing what Second Street's about. So, and I say all of this to let council know that we're probably still 2 to 3 years out, so that we can better understand Second Street, but that would be the plan, to build a more complete project.
Last question, if I can, and then I'll get off. We've heard tonight that the record of decision we're hoping to have in May of 2017. Even the most conservative folks agreed that once that happens, you could start spending bond money on purchasing right-of-way in Marion County. So, and quite frankly, as somebody who spent a great deal of time on the Streets and Bridges bond measure, and as it's depicted in the ballot measure itself, the bridge was a focal point of that $3.6 million. Why are we not continuing to wait until that record of decision to see how the money could best be utilized in conjunction with the bridge?
Well, frankly, that's an excellent question, and the council could make that policy choice. What we see is a desire to spend that money, and about every 6 months, there's a new desire on that money. So what we're seeking with this staff report is some policy direction so that we can move forward. We're getting to the end of the bond. Auditors don't like to see bond money sitting around forever. It's a very small amount of the $100 million, but what we're really seeking is some policy direction to say we're moving forward with these funds to do something productive with them. The Public Works Director's crystal ball says that we'll be talking about a transportation bond issue for 2018 or maybe 2020, where I think Marine Drive will once again show up along with McGilchrist, so as a couple of the marquee projects in them. So it isn't that far away. When you think it's 2016 and we're 2 years out, by the time we're looking to construct and build kind of the first phase, we'd be ready to identify the funding for the next phase.
All right, thanks.
Okay. I'd like to take a moment and ask Mr. Fernandez to just briefly walk us through the supplemental report.
Certainly, Mayor.
Because I think that it addresses some of the erroneous information that was given earlier this evening in some of the testimony. Right. And I'd like to just have that, for our viewers and on the record.
Certainly, Mayor.
Okay.
And just for folks that did not see, I prepared a supplemental staff report that was provided to the council this afternoon in additions. And what we were attempting to do is to really just respond to the comments and the and the questions that were provided to the council over the weekend and earlier today, just to provide the additional information and some clarity. And the first is the use, what is the language in the Streets and Bridges bond measure? And there's kind of two parts to this, and I can see where there's confusion. The legal document is this piece of paper right here, and this is what really directs everything that we have done. And when we speak to bond counsel, this is what bond counsel refers to first and foremost. And the language in here in the explanatory statement says, purchase street right-of-way for future Willamette River Bridge and Marine Drive Northwest and associated street and ramp connections. And that's all it says, and it doesn't say anything related to a record of decision, Federal Highway Administration approvals, or the like. The staff has been on record from day one that it would be good to have a Federal Highway Administration approval and a record of decision, because that's the way we operate on every project, to have our permits in place and everything in order before we proceed. So the piece of paper that Mr. Shepke showed you is in fact a piece of paper that was produced by staff, and which is on your desks, and it in fact says that we should wait for Federal Highway and the record of decision, and that was a staff-produced document that was produced in 2008. So clearly that is out there, that is on the record, as I mentioned in the supplemental staff report, but it is not a legal document.
I see.
Okay, but I can understand why there is confusion in the community.
Is this a report that was adopted by council, or?
No, it was not. It was produced, what was adopted by council is this piece of paper, is the ballot measure and explanatory statement. And that's what went to the voters.
All right.
So while there has been a lot of staff conversation, and Julie reminded me that many times, because this issue has been before the council several times over the years, we have stood up and said, boy, it sure would be great to wait. Because we've always been looking toward moving the bridge project forward and using this money for right-of-way, for selective right-of-way acquisitions. So that, I hope that clarifies that aspect of it. The other aspects is then what about the right-of-way acquisitions on the east side? And when you look at the staff report, you really see that the staff report has two components. One is deciding what we're going to do with the money, actually three components. Deciding what we're doing with the money, deciding on a Marine Drive, and then is there an opportunity to spend some of the money on the east side? That is really, that is simply an opportunity purchase. Frankly, to be very specific, we were looking at the old Stars Cabaret site that burned down a few years ago. The realtor that represents that property owner has called me several times over the years saying, are you guys ready to buy it? Are you guys ready to buy it? And I have always said we're not, because we're waiting for a record of decision. Now we hear that the property has sold. They're moving forward with the development, and it was simply, that portion of the recommendation was simply, if they were willing, as an arm's length transaction, to sell it to the city, that we would be willing, with council direction, we would be willing to purchase it. I appreciate Mr. Courtwright's analysis and Mr. Hines' analysis. I disagree completely with their analysis. This is really a council decision. Federal funds are not being used. These are city funds that are being used. The city can acquire a property having nothing to do with an EIS. So, and that's really all that's going on here, and the only reason for that piece of it. So it's simply an opportunity. Getting the policy direction for Marine Drive and accepting the policy direction not to worry about right of requisitions just simply clarifies where we're spending the money, and frankly, I appreciate it.
Okay.
And then the final one is the allowing the construction of Marine Drive. Mr. Easterly's comments. We've checked. We were concerned when the question, and this question came up about 2 years ago. Well, if we want to build a portion of Marine Drive, can we do that given the language in the explanatory statement and the ballot title. And we checked with our bond counsel, and our bond counsel studied it very carefully and let us know that in his opinion, that would be construction, right-of-way acquisition and construction of Marine Drive would be an appropriate use of these funds. So we were concerned about that question, and we specifically studied that, and the answer that we have for you tonight is that, in fact, we can, if you choose to pass the motion, that money, in fact, can be used to construct Marine Drive.
Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate all of that clarification.
Thank you, Mayor.
Now, I believe that we are to Councillor Dickey.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things. One, I just appreciate Councillor Bennett for bringing this motion forward and altering the staff's recommendation in a way that helps us get at Marine Drive, which we've been talking about for a long time. I had significant concerns about approving funding for potential somewhere out there property in the Highland neighborhood, especially without the neighborhood having been notified ahead of time. I wasn't aware until I think maybe this morning, maybe last night when Councilor McQuaid called, that there was even a particular property in question that you were looking at in the Highland neighborhood. It reads as if it's a blanket permission to do that, and I appreciate you seeking the policy direction, but I certainly can't go there right now, and I especially having worked very hard on our Salem preferred alternative and the oversight committee giving us something completely, well, not completely different, but not the same thing as what we worked really hard on without knowing exactly what that property acquisition would be. I absolutely can't support that at this time. So having said that, I do have a question then, kind of going along the lines with what you were asking, or what you were just explaining. If a particular opportunity came up, and and at this point I wouldn't, we're going to wait till we have a record of decision. In my head, that's the right thing to do. Do you need a blanket policy direction, or can you say, we have an opportunity to purchase this X piece of property and get council permission property by property?
Right. So assuming that the motion that's on the table is what is adopted, then if someone approached us, as we've been approached, on that particular property, once we had a record of decision, then we would, yes, then property, unless we had other direction, then property by property, we would come to council and make the request. We would have to identify funding. So, we have had, and I stated it in the supplemental report, we have actually had very good experience in acquiring right-of-way ahead of time, and Market-Sweigel connection is really the one of the best, most recent examples where over years, 20 years, we slowly acquired properties, but that, as some folks stated in their emails, that in fact had been in the transportation plan as an adopted alignment so that we could make those acquisitions. So without the policy direction, then we would simply, at this point, I think we would continue to just wait for the record of decision before we proceeded, because we do need to put it in the transportation plan. Once this money is, which was allocated with a big area that says we can buy anywhere in here, if we're now taking away that cross-hatching that you see in that map and saying it's just this line, then we'd wait for the record of decision and for funding being identified.
Thanks.
All right. Were there other questions? I see Councillor Nanke and then Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this has come before us multiple times. We talked about keeping the Streets and Bridges Bond Committee functional, and I was the only one left, and normally this would have kind of come in front of that. We talked about the issue of whether or not we wait until after the record of decision, and that's in talking with staff and the potential for reopening based on if we acquired right-of-way outside of the standard Marine Drive configuration. And that was, what, a year or two
Yes,
ago
April
now?
of 2015. Right.
Elected to just kind of stay on that path. We're kind of coming up to the end. But I remember in that, it was like, and if staff sees some kind of an opportunity to purchase, it will save us a lot of money, bring it to us. Because it sounds like there's a piece of property that's now potentially going to be developed, which will cost us potentially millions of dollars more.
Right.
When we're actually ready to go that direction. So I appreciate staff bringing it forward. The staff report in and of itself was like, well, how much money are we talking about over here versus over here? And there was a lot of questions, and I think a lot of people out in the community were confused as well, which kind of gets back to how we started out tonight with the communication strategy. And because we knew there would be a lot of people looking at this one as well, so I think we could have done a little better.
We could have done, Counselor, we could have done a lot better in expressing. We got, well, we felt we needed to get a staff report back to the council. I got caught up in meeting that deadline and lost sight of being able to provide more information to the community. So that's my failure.
Thanks.
Yes, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. I too appreciate Councilor Bennett's motion in narrowing things down, and I want to now get back to the discussion of the motion that is on the table, not what a motion could have been, which seems to me where the discussion has been going a little bit lately. I'm looking at, I don't know which map this is. This is from, it's from you through Mr. Powers with this nice brightly colored map there. Okay. Where on that is Marine Drive that was planned in 1997? Is that the red dotted line that we see?
It is. It is. Every red dotted line you see was part of that adoption.
Yeah. So then in 2008, when the street and bond measure was passed, that was the Marine Drive of which we were speaking.
That is correct.
And the voters were speaking.
That is correct.
So now, when I look at this map, I see it, especially on Area 1, Area 2 and Area 3, it kind of wiggles in and out of the urban growth boundary. Was that the way the urban growth boundary was in 1997 and in 2008?
So the black line that you see is the urban growth boundary that was established in 1982.
Okay, so it's still there.
The reason Marine Drive wiggles in and out is Marine Drive is, the alignment is attempting to follow the upper bench.
Right. It's a matter of topography and best engineering. I understand all that. Then, if one were to want to get Marine Drive into the urban growth boundary, that process is not the same as making a very large change to the urban growth boundary. Is that correct?
It is. My understanding is it is the same process, just for very small acreage.
Okay,
but it's the same tortured process, whether we're doing, 15 acres, 20 acres, or we're doing 200 acres.
Is that true, Glenn? Is that the case? I mean, I agree. We all agree it's a torture process.
Yes.
I'm not asking you to comment on that. I'm asking you if the amount of time and energy to do this would be the same as if we're going to expand the urban growth boundary by 200 acres.
Right. Well, I think the key to me is that in this case, we're not talking about expanding the urban growth boundary to accommodate growth.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about accommodating an infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And the rules are set up mostly for
growth.
Yes, expanding the urban growth boundary to accommodate growth. So it'll be important, and I know that the public works staff is working with their consultant on this. It'll be important to develop the findings that focus on why we're expanding the growth boundary here.
So would you say that would be less torturous or more torturous than growth?
We're hoping it's less, but
okay, you can't.
I can't promise anything.
Because I look at this, and in light of the testimony, in light of Councilor Lewis and I were down there on site some time ago with Mr. Wigg looking at things. If we didn't have this urban growth boundary issue, I'd say let's take it all the way up to the top of Marine Drive. So now, having said that, and this kind of, I guess I'm moving into the territory of we don't want to talk about the east side of the river because it's all still possibilities now. So under the same theory, I guess it wouldn't be so good to say, let's acquire the Marine Drive right-of-way that is currently in the urban growth boundary, with the thought that in the future we will be able to expand the urban growth boundary, because we may not, just like the proposed bridge may never be built. So we don't want to buy the process. Would that be a fair statement of the analogy?
That is correct.
Okay, well then I won't be making an alternative motion to acquire all of Marine Drive based on that explanation.
Thank you.
But I will support the motion as made.
Councillor Lewis.
I have one more issue I'd like to address, and it comes from the staff report. And the statement is, the preferred alternative for the future bridge alignment is well known. And I get the sense from even some of the councilors here that that may not necessarily be accepted by all. So my question is, because it was before my time, but it's my understanding that there was an alternative chosen, and it is specific enough to show where the alignment is on both the west and east side of the river. So my question is, in fairness to those property owners and for the sake of transparency, have they been notified?
I don't believe that there's been any formal notice. There's been obviously a lot of attention given in the community, but I don't think there's been any formal notice to impacted property owners. Is that correct, Julie? Go ahead.
Julie Warnicki, Public Works Department. After the preferred alternative was recommended by the oversight team, the Salem River Crossing Project team held an open house that summer, and we sent notices to everybody within the, within that whole study area. So we did not specifically send a notice to, property owner X and say your property is in it, but we sent notices to everybody that would be within that area.
Okay. Well, this may be outside of this issue, but if I come from out of town and I'm not paying attention to this, and I make an offer to purchase a piece of property that is right smack in the middle of where this bridge is going to be, it's theoretically possible that I may not know about it. So I really think that we should do something in the deed records to tag these properties. This alignment is notorious enough. The city has chosen it. Now, we're waiting for approvals from the state and from the federal government, but the city has made its decision. And I think the city has the obligation to notify the property owners of that decision. That, for me, would resolve the issue of this so-called cloud over the neighborhood. And I'm not sure why we have not done that. To assume that people are aware of it because it's been talked about is not good enough notice in my mind. So, end of comment.
Do you want me to address it? Okay, so, Mayor and Council, the general rule on the condemnation blight or eminent domain is that reduction in value really doesn't attach until you've made a formal decision to place it into a plan or a policy. At this point, and Julie and Peter, please correct me if I'm wrong, the selection of the Salem preferred alternative is part of the EAS process. And it's not really, you haven't done the land use actions yet, you haven't done the formal selection yet. So it's not, at this point, the threat of condemnation or the threat of the city taking the property isn't ripe legally. Now, while there may be some advantage or some reason to go out and speak to property owners about this as being considered, that may be worthwhile. It just legally it wouldn't be required.
Councillor Bennett, followed by Councillor McCoy.
Thank you. Just following up on Councillor Lewis's comments, would Would the notice go when we start looking at adopting this into the transportation system plan? Is that where the notice would begin to really occur more specifically?
Correct.
Okay. So nothing has happened until we actually begin to hold public hearing and moving forward on the transportation system plan. What's the legal notice look? I mean, is it within 250 feet of the right-of-way, or does it work like land use planning? How does that work?
I can answer that. The transportation system plan is a legislative amendment, so there isn't not necessarily individualized notice to specific property owners
Well,
required.
it would strike me that one thing that would be helpful, just a thought, is as we move toward that goal, maybe it could be sort of examined how that could be noticed in such a way that we would meet potential. I think what Councilor Lewis is describing is perhaps expectations of property owners. They know what's happening to them. You know what I mean? Does that, not as a legal, but as a kind of legislative process, that it just is good?
We can always provide more notice than what's legally required.
Excellent. Maybe we ought to examine that for cost and kind of what we're doing, maybe how that would work. Yeah, we really should.
All right. So when would the transportation system plan actually begin, that work begin?
We are actively working on the findings right now. We will be coming to council to initiate a package of amendments that will include the amendment to the transportation system plan as well as the urban growth boundary. That package I anticipate coming in spring or summer to initiate. Trying to get all of our ducks in a row so that we're ready to move from initiation into notice, outreach, and then public hearing without a huge amount of delay, but also recognizing that we will need time for that outreach during that period.
Okay.
So is that the point at which then you would include as part of that process, here's what it'll cost us to do some sort of notice process? And I'm thinking both sides of the river as well. I mean, sort of get everybody taken care of at once.
Cost is not going to be the issue,
that's in the
Counselor.
crosshairs.
Yeah,
we're talking about a $500 million
Just
project.
checking. Sometimes
a couple $1,000s worth of notice is not an issue.
Process can
no, that's not a problem.
But we would come and initiate. We would first initiate, and then we would go out and do the notice. So we're not going to do the notice of the initiation, but we'll do the notice of the public hearing after it's been initiated.
Right. It's just getting those people. I think Councilor Lewis is asking really a good question, policy question for us.
That's not a problem. That's a great. We appreciate the direction.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Councilor McCoy, then Bednarz, then Anderson.
I have reading this, something I saw, it piqued my curiosity, and I'll read it. It says, construction of Marine Drive outside of the UGB is not permitted under Polk County land use regulations. So I read that, so if it was permitted, would you still have to go through a bunch of, if Polk County land use regulations said, yeah, you can construct it outside of would we be still going to the state?
Then the UGB wouldn't be an issue, right?
Well, why don't we go to Polk County and have them change their land use regulations?
Actually, we've had that conversation, Counselor, and Polk County said go in the UGB. So we something else. There is, without getting into too much detail, there is another way, and the county said no. We prefer that you go down the UGB amendment way.
And why is that?
They just felt that was the better way to do it.
Yeah.
Ask if there's new commissioners.
If I can comment.
Yes.
So state law doesn't allow us to put an urban facility outside the UGB. There may be some county ordinances that could be amended to facilitate that, but it's a state law issue. It's not the county just saying no. Yeah.
All right. Councilor Bednarz, followed by Councilor Anderson.
I had a couple questions here. First one was, we keep stopping about buying property up to Cameo Street, I think, is what we're looking at, and or perhaps it's Glen Creek, I think. But I think some of us are thinking about getting further north. And then we run into this UGB, which we've been talking about now for a few minutes. My question is but there is still part of Marine Drive that sits inside the UGB that's north of Cameo. And there's quite a bit, actually. Yeah, as you further, there's a few chunks that don't. But my point is that mostly it's, I think, farmland at this point. At least a lot of that is. It would be rather inexpensive to pick up now rather than to wait.
The staff recommendation actually says south of the UGB. So it's actually north of Cameo. So we would like to acquire from the UGB south along the alignment.
So you're talking about from Riverbend south?
No. From just north of Cameo, you see the black line.
Yeah.
So it's from that black line south.
Yes, but I'm pointing to the parts where it's
right. But I wanted to clarify that it's not just Cameo. It's just north of Cameo.
Right.
Because there's a property there. Councilor, the council could certainly direct us to do that. There's $3.6 million. So the question becomes, do we want to spread thin and make those additional acquisitions? Do we want to enter into negotiations and proceed to a possible eminent domain situation on property owners that may not want to sell? The folks that were here today, their property, unfortunately, is outside of the UGB. So I appreciate their willingness to sell it to us. Or do we want to concentrate the money on the portion that we're trying to construct? So that's really, it's all about concentrating the $3.6 million into a project that we know we can build.
Well, I guess what
as
I'm looking
opposed
to knowing that it's either forest land or farmland at this point, its cost per acre is going to be anywhere near 3.6 to get the slivers that we need to go all the way up there.
Yeah, the issue here is that once they come in, you see that there's portions of Marine Drive built. So when folks come in for a development proposal, they have to dedicate that right of way anyway, because it's already in the plan. Now, they don't necessarily have to build it if they don't front on it. So the piece that you see built, there's actually has frontage on both sides.
That's a good answer. What you just gave me satisfies what I'm...
But they have to, if it comes in for development, they have to dedicate the right of way anyway.
Okay.
They just don't necessarily have to build it.
Okay. And just real quickly, I don't want to have the 2-second kind of version of, so what is it? What's the process of amending the UGB?
Well, I guess I'll leave it to experts that know.
I mean, vaguely, roughly...
Well, there's a set of procedures and criteria outlined in the state law, and we have to make findings that shows that we're meeting each of those criteria, or that they're not applicable. In general, that's it. And for details on that, I would defer to...
it's one of these things where we had cell towers in here. If we make the process of siting a cell tower so difficult that basically you're making it impossible for somebody to locate a cell tower, that's the process for changing the UGB?
Well, I think it's pretty well known that it's been very difficult to expand urban growth boundaries in the state of Oregon for several years now. I'm hopeful that because we're not talking about an expansion to accommodate housing or jobs or something like that, but rather just a street and a bridge, that it won't be that difficult. But we won't know until we go through it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, a lot of the hemming and hawing is, our UGB has served us since 1982. This community has never amended the UGB because it was big enough to accommodate us all these years.
Yeah.
So we're really, as a community, we're new at this.
And the housing needs analysis that we just finished is the same thing, but you've got a very good reason. There's a geographical, the topographical issue why we're doing it, or would do it.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. It seems like Council Bednar's first set of question was coming at the issue I raised from maybe a slightly different angle. That is, why don't we just buy up the property that's already in the urban growth boundary? And I think your answer is the same, that what happens if we buy that and then we cannot get the urban growth boundary changed to allow Marine Drive? We bought a bunch of property or right-of-way that we're never going to be able to use unless we spend a lot of time and energy moving Marine Drive back inside. So as much as I would like to get on Marine Drive, I don't think we should do that. But I thought that Councilor Bennett's motion was only to Cameo and not to the urban growth boundary.
I think it's...
The reason I asked that is because if you look at Cameo, then again, under the same theory that we've been talking about in response to my questions and Council Bednar's question, building north from Cameo to the urban growth boundary could be, or acquiring right-of-way, could be a useless act.
It says acquisition, construction, Marine Drive south of the urban growth boundary near Cameo.
So near Cameo's, just to give you a
Yeah.
look.
And the issue there, Counselor, Council certainly could get more specific. We know there is a property owner, because we have talked to a lot of
wants to
property owners.
sell.
There is a fourplex up there, and that property owner has spoken with us many times, and we want to have the opportunity, if he is willing, we won't need it for us, for the initial street system, but if he is a willing seller, that is an opportunity to address that issue and acquire the property from him. So that's.
But again, if we can't get Marine Drive inside the urban growth boundary.
We would then attach that little nub to Wallace Marine Park.
Okay, so in other words, there could be some use for that,
Yes.
putting that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we can always sell the property for, so if Marine Drive just is
Never
constructed,
happens.
never happens, then we can always resell the property. Frankly, if he showed up tomorrow after this motion passes and says, I want to sell, we would probably purchase it and just give it to the housing authority to run.
I'm sure he will show up tomorrow if he's watching this, as I hope everybody is.
We would not immediately tear out that fourplex.
And then I have a follow-up question, I think probably for Ms. Warnicki. You know, the rest of the council knows my views about the proposed bridge, but in seeking to expand the urban growth boundary, that would also just pick up Marine Drive. All of Marine Drive would be expanded too, which is,
Yes.
I don't oppose that.
Yes.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
thanks.
Councillor Lewis, I saw your hand.
Yeah, one more irritation, if I could.
To you or to us?
Not mine, Councilor Lewis.
So, extending it to the south urban growth boundary takes it just, if I'm looking at the map correctly, takes it just past the apartment complex into bare land.
There's actually a run of houses on the north side of Cameo, and then just north of Cameo, right where the alignment is, there's a fourplex.
I'm just, in the event that the third bridge doesn't happen, I'm trying to find a way to get that extension to Wallace Boulevard. And so I'm wondering if there's room there for that, if there's been any thought for.
Well, the extension would be, I think what your suggestion, I mean, if we wanted to kind of have a north connection to Wallace Road, we would want to look at the possibility that you have suggested of extending Cameo to the west. Because I don't see, there's the black urban growth boundary line there is people's back, that's the back fence of those houses. So it would be Cameo. There would also be an opportunity to perhaps provide a connection to, I'm not exactly sure what's on the other side. Yeah, we probably couldn't connect to Wallace Marine Park right there. So it would be to Cameo. But again, the goal is to make the connection to the south and to incorporate it with 2nd Street. So that even if we never go north, and I'm confident that we'll be able to build Marine Drive someday soon to the north of Cameo, but we can certainly make the connections to the south.
All right, are there other questions or comments by councilors? No. Are we ready for the question? All right, the motion that was presented by Councillor Bennett was to authorize using Streets and Bridges General Obligation Bond Funds for right-of-way acquisition and construction of Marine Drive Northwest south of the urban growth boundary, parentheses, near Cameo Drive Northwest, close parentheses, period. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. In the agenda this evening, there were several items under the information reports. Item 6, there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. Were there questions by counselors or comments on any of those information reports? Apparently not. All right. We will move to ordinances. We have no first readings, and we have a second reading. Would the city recorder please call the roll?
Ordinance Bill Number 116 relating to amending the Salem Transportation System Plan, a component of the Salem Area Comprehensive Plan, and amending Salem Revised Code Section 64.005. Counselor Nanki?
Aye.
Counselor McCoy?
Aye.
Counselor Dickey?
Aye.
Counselor Benjamin?
Aye.
Counselor Bednarz?
Aye.
Counselor Lewis?
Aye.
Counselor Bennett?
Aye.
Counselor Anderson?
Aye.
Mayor Peterson?
Aye. Thank you. That ordinance passes. Is there anyone signed up for public comment? Oh, but there is. All right. I see it. Ron Sturba. Come on down. And tonight it's not as late as it has been sometimes, which is a good thing.
Exactly, Mayor. Thank
Welcome.
you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, city councilors, and city staff, and a couple of citizens. I'm here because I'm saddened about the pedestrian who was hit by a car, only because the city spent probably $50,000 to put an island in the middle of the street and a crosswalk just several hundred feet away. And right there, where the accident happened, was this pitiful LED light that PG went ahead and authorized to put in. And I've been coming to these meetings for 2 years, over 2 years, to make my point. This was not something that had to happen. When I talk about a marked, good lit intersection, I want you to look at 17th and D Street that has full cutoff, high pressure sodium lights. All 4 corners are lit up. Silverton and Lancaster Road, beautiful development, well lit with full cutoff lighting, no glare. 23rd and State Street, full cutoff lighting, all 4 corners can be seen very well with the lighting. We may want to keep this, as some of the other cities have done, the high pressure sodium, which has less glare, at intersections. Now, 2 weeks ago, I came with a plan that we should talk about taking lighting and increasing it at the crosswalks so people are seen. I think we need to move farther on that, and that is to get a hold of our state representatives, Mr. Courtney and Mr. Clem, and get a allocation of monies from ODOT to fund lighting of crosswalks for cities who have a lot of pedestrians crossing that. I think it's really important. I think it's imperative that we take care of our residents. I'm sorry that that had to happen over on 17th Street. I was there right after it happened, and it really bothered me. Mayor, there is a gentleman here, I believe his name was Dennis Miller. He came and talked about cards right here. This is the Oregon state law. I got this from Julia. Crosswalks with Oregon Department of Transportation. I will get these over to you shortly. They have them here. Crosswalks, they're there at the intersection. A crosswalk in the middle of the street that is marked is a legal crosswalk, but to walk out into the street, it's your own life at hand. You can't expect people to stop for you.
Thank you very much. Can you wrap up real quickly? Your time is up. Are you done?
Please get better lighting in the city with our money for the street light fee. I really appreciate that.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down to testify. Were there questions of any by any counselors? All right. Thank you.
May I hand these out?
Sure, certainly. Yeah, you can just, actually, if you want to just give them to staff, and then they'll get them around to all of us. Okay. We have no new business, and we are, oh, excuse me, Counselor Nanki.
Just as a follow-up on these books, they are online, so if counselors don't want to take them home, staff printed minimal copies
Okay.
of these.
good
They
to
can
know.
have them to distribute to the public. I know we just typically hate extra paper a lot of times, so we get enough.
Good point. Okay. All right, we are adjourned.